Before I call our regular meeting to order, Council, would you please report out on our closed session, special closed session meeting?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The Board of Supervisors met in closed session on the special meeting agenda, item number 1 today. They conferred with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation and the significant exposure to litigation pursuant to subdivisions D of section 54956.9 in one case. This closed session is authorized by section 54956.9 D2 and E2 of the Government Code. On March 16, 2015, the County Counsel's Office received a pre-filing complaint from BMC Promise Way LCC, doing business as Benchmark Communities, which challenges the annexation fee as applied to the vesting map approved on December 19, 2015. At this time, the board took no reportable action. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Okay, now I'd like to call our regular meeting to order. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. And I will ask Supervisor Munzer to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready? Salute.
Is there a motion to acknowledge the certificate of posting?
So move. Second, Madam Chair.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Presentations and recognitions. At this time, I will make a motion that we approve the proclamation declaring April 11th, 2015 as Walk a Mile in Her Shoes Day in San Benito County, and I will invite Supervisor De La Cruz to present the proclamation. So that was my motion.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Is this on? Okay. First of all, I'd just like to inform the public that this will be my second try at putting on some red high heels, and walk a mile. And let me tell you something. I asked my wife after that event last year. I really do appreciate now for dress for me and the way she dresses, the way she selects her shoes, because it's painful. And I'm looking for tippers and hints on how to wear high heels this Saturday, because I will participate in it. And I really do appreciate it. And thank you, Madam Chair. Whereas Walk a Mile in Her Shoes Day is intended to draw attention to the fact that rapes, sexual assault, intimate partners abuse remain serious issues in our society. And whereas, in addition to the immediate physical and emotional costs, rape, sexual assault, and intimate partner abuse may also have associated consequences of post-traumatic stress disorder, substance abuse, depression, homelessness, eating disorder, and suicide. And whereas Walk a Mile in Her Shoes literally asks men to walk a mile in women's shoes to help men better understand and appreciate women's experiences. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors for the County of San Benito designate April 11th, 2015 as Walk a Mile in Her Shoes in San Benito County. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And before I give it all to them, I just want to say I understand. I appreciate it. Going to walk again, and this time it's going to be with more. It's going to be with honor and more understanding, because the first time it was more of a challenge, and to understand the function today, this Saturday, it really means a lot, because there'll be people behind this cause, and for that, thank you very much on behalf of the Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Board of Supervisors, and all in attendance today. I'm Patrice. I'm the director of the Emmaus House, and this is Debbie with Community Solutions. And on behalf of both of us, I'd like to thank the Board of Supervisors for recognizing that April 11th will be our third annual Walk a Mile in Her Shoe Day. And as we know, these types of tragedies do affect our county and all of the people involved, so it's nice to have a good community fun awareness event to bring this issue to light for everyone. And as I looked back over the pictures of last year, I did notice that Supervisor Dela Cruz actually wore 5 different pairs of shoes before he crossed the finish line. So I'm hoping this year we get him some that are a little bit more comfortable, and they are available now. So if you'd like to start practicing today, I can bring some by for you.
Good idea.
So welcome. Hope all of you can come join us on Saturday.
Thank you, Patrice.
And Debbie, I'm part of Community Solutions, and I just want to thank everybody in the community and the Board of Supervisors. And I really appreciate Supervisor Jaime for you also saying that this year you understand why Emmaus House and Community Solutions does this work. And, you know, as he read in the proclamation, the trauma, you know, that people go through. And there's sometimes so much victim blaming with, you know, the survivors. And so, you know, thank you for saying that today he really understands why we do this. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to public comments. Anyone from the public that would like to address the board on items that are not on the agenda? Do we have any speaker cards?
First speaker is Andy Shaw-Caron.
Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the supervisors and staff. Today is a very bright morning, even though it's raining outside, maybe because it's raining outside. On Friday, Citadel Exploration's lawyers made a motion to have their suit against our county dismissed in regards to Measure J and their argument that state law preempted our right to make the decision about our future in our county. We knew from the beginning they had made that argument all through the campaign, and they had a big megaphone with their $2.1 million to keep on shouting at the community that we have no rights, we can't decide, that their privileges trump our rights. And we pursued this. Our community got engaged like it has never gotten engaged before. In an election where most people did not vote, we had a 58% turnout. 59% of the people voted for Measure J. And in spite of all the television commercials and radio commercials. And now, with the withdrawal of this suit, we know that in California, at least, communities do have the right to make these decisions, and when our county locked behind defending the will of the people, when the supervisors decided to establish a legal defense fund, it sent a signal that we were not going to be intimidated. And I want to thank you all, and I think it's a great day. Thanks.
Next speaker is Mary Shaw-Caron.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Although the major legal threat to San Benito County and to Measure J has been averted, there still remains a smaller risk of future takings claims by individuals who wish to pursue fracking and other high-risk drilling techniques. I'd like to recommend today that we all continue to build up our legal defense funds. We have some plans for some fundraisers coming up ourselves. We think that this could be a great deterrent, and from Citadel CEO's recent comments and Benito Link, they were, I think, rather disparaging remarks about the legal defense fund that you established about 2 weeks ago. We think that having a good war chest is a great deterrent to future bullies who may contemplate suing our county. So I think I'd like to concur with Andy. This is a great day, and I really look forward to working with the supervisors on some fundraising activities in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Larry Rabaki.
Good morning, Madam Chair and the Board of Supervisors and the staff of San Benito County. I would like to reiterate what Andy said, and this is one of the best days of my life. The rain is welcomed. The Giants won last night. The A's won last night. And Citadel has dismissed the case. So it's a great day. And I hope the county council can sleep tonight, because I know he's been preoccupied with this case. And I just want to thank the community in general. And I think, as Andy said earlier, it proves that when people unite and you stand up to big corporations, the people will prevail. We had the law is on our side, and we just a matter of establishing a defense, and we will be there. We have always promised that we will be there for the county, and I hope all the board members sleep well and county council sleeps well, and thank you for your support.
Any other comments from the public? Any other speaker cards? Okay.
Margaret Rebecki.
Good morning, Madam and board members. I particularly would like to thank Robert Rivas from the beginning and Anthony Botello, who really supported our Measure J from the beginning. And so, you know, they went through a lot, and the rest of you who supported Measure J after. But I would like to say that this is not only a win for our community, this is a win for the state of California, because this is a movement that not just started here in San Benito County. This is a movement that we want, and I am going to work hard to ban fracking. And this is a message for our Governor Brown, that we want to ban fracking in California. And I just would like to say that this is to protect our water that we drink. This is about our air that we breathe. This wasn't just a political thing. I know we didn't have fracking here, but we wanted to protect our water. And I think I've been living in San Benito County for 40 years, and I have to say that this has been the most important election out of all these years, because the people got involved. The people said, we are not going to allow this in San Benito County. So I am so thankful that now other counties cannot say, look what happened in San Benito County. They got sued. Now we're going to go all the way to Monterey and ban fracking there also. And tomorrow I am going to Kern County, and I wish that you people, all of you, understand that when you go to Kern County, the water is polluted there. Aquifers have been contaminated, and I think a lot of you have been reading about this. And the air, the worst, and they are not rich there in Kern County, let me tell you. This is something that we're not going to stop, and I hope that we continue supporting solar energy, wind energy here in San Benito County, and electric cars in California. But from the beginning of the movement, and I especially want to thank Andy and Mary, we have worked super hard every day. From the moment we won, we walked door to door talking to people, and people telling us, give it up, you're not going to win. The lawsuit, no, we never gave up. And I have a saying for Margaret Mead, who said, never believe that a few caring people can change the world. For indeed, that's all who ever have. And I just want to thank our community for getting out there and voted, and we can make a change. So thank you so much, Robert and Anthony, for being there for us all the time. And Jaime, thank you for picking up your phone and listening to me in your ear. Thank you so much, Jaime. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Margaret.
Next speaker is John Janetto.
What is the name?
Are you going to speak, John?
I was going to speak on the homeowners association on the trees.
Okay, you didn't mark it, so I took it as,
Okay, that will be on the future agenda item.
I don't have any other speakers.
Okay. I welcome anybody else from the public that would like to come up and address the board on items not on the agenda. It is freezing. My nose is cold.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for full disclosure, Santa Barbara County had a Measure P on their ballot in the last election to ban fracking, and it was overwhelmingly defeated. They continued with their enhanced oil extraction in Santa Barbara County, so it's not yet statewide. Hopefully, Governor Brown will do what's right and allow commercial activity in in the state of California. We don't allow commercial activity in San Benito County. We just build houses so people can ride up and down Route 25 to go to work. So just for full disclosure, Measure P, Santa Barbara County, was defeated overwhelmingly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marty Richard from Hollister. I'm glad to have this large captive audience to talk about another energy issue, which is the Pinocchio Valley Solar Project. And I would like to ask the people in San Benito County not just to be against things, but to be for things too. You can't just ride one side of the issues. And what you can be for is a large solar project that will replace 1 million gallons of oil, 1 million barrels of oil a year, more than 1 million barrels of oil a year. Now, one way to get off the oil pipeline, if you want to be off the oil, is to replace that energy with renewable energy. And renewable energy means that you're going to have to build solar projects, means you're going to have to build wind projects, and you're going to have to build other projects. You cannot, I think people have come to the realization, you cannot do it with hydroelectric because the water runs out, okay? And the problem with solar, what there is of it, is the fact that it doesn't work at night and you have to be able to store the energy somewhere. The vast majority of renewable energy projects in companies like Germany are not solar. Everybody who runs around sees the solar panels and goes, Germany's all solar. It's not. The vast majority of renewable energy in Germany is wind energy. So you have to build the turbines and you have to be able to put them up. Now, the problem comes in if everybody objects to everywhere it goes, then you can't get it, okay? You can't put it up. And although I would hope that the battery technology catches up with everything else, the truth of the matter is the battery technology has not, and our ability to move energy has not. Every time you go to build a transmission line, everybody within 1,000 miles objects. And so they're not building transmission lines. And they're certainly not building the high voltage transmission lines we need in this nation. So I would hope that all these people who were against fracking and against certain oil operations, we had an election. It was a fair election. They won fairly. And now I hope they put their other hat on, like I put out my homeowner's hat sometimes, and sometimes my public hat, and get on the other side of this project and get that Pinocchio Valley project moving by calling your senator and your congressman and your state legislatures and telling them you want it online. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Marty. Any other comments from the public? Okay, we'll move on to department head announcements. CAO?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we do have a few announcements this morning. The first one comes to us out of our special board meeting that we had last week, and it's with regards to an initiative out of COG and polling. So we have Mary Gilbert here. She's our interim COG director to give your board an update.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, so I wanted to report out a little bit on the results of the polling that COG initiated. We did a random selection of 300 registered voters in San Benito County and conducted the polling from March 24th to 29th. So just some of the initial information that we've got back is that voters are really recognizing the need for transportation funding in San Benito County, that there's a significant need for new funding. Nearly 80% believe that we need additional transportation funding. And there was support for a sales tax to support transportation in this poll. So we saw over 2/3 support for a sales tax. And of course, we'd have to drill that down and get more information, but that's kind of a baseline, and that's what we really wanted out of this poll, to get some information. The projects that that voters were most interested in included widening Highway 25, roadway repair, and also better transit services for youth, seniors, and people with disabilities. So again, something I think that we have all discussed is that we would need a full package of improvements in order to appeal to voters and really make the most impact. So that's pretty much the information that I have. Our polling really supports, moving forward with some of the next steps that we've discussed.
Thank you, Mary. Question from Supervisor Botello?
Yeah, thank you, Mary, for coming this morning. We have a presentation a little bit later on in the agenda, and I was very pleased that this board requested a report on these polling numbers, and I think we have to continue to educate the public as far as the deterioration of our local roads and streets. And, as much as we'd like to think that we're all paying enough taxes with our fuel taxes and property taxes and sales taxes, it's not quite enough to maintain our, very important investment locally, and we'll have to step up as a community to protect and maintain the roads. And if we can get the results of this poll when they're completed in hard copy, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Mary, will you have these by the 21st, our next board meeting?
Yes. We will be having a full presentation on our April 16th Council of Governments Board agenda. So that's at 3 p.m. here if anyone wants to attend. And then also, so by the 24th, yes, we can have that information to the Board of Supervisors as well.
If we could go ahead and put you on the agenda
Yeah.
and CAO so that
I'll
you
make
can
sure.
make a formal presentation,
Absolutely.
it would be great.
Okay.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm sorry. Okay. No. CAO?
Yeah, we also have another announcement out of our Health and Human Services Department. This is coming from James Riding Sword. He is our director there, and this is going to be with regards to the Helping Hands. Jim?
Morning. So for the past few years, the Homeless Coalition has been managing a federal grant called Helping Hands. Helping Hands is a program that allows approximately 10 individuals and families to move into permanent housing on a lease management agreement with the landlord. The Homeless Coalition came to us a few weeks ago and said because of transition that they're going through, they were asking if we could assume responsibility of this, and we are. We have hired a temporary person to do that, and we have been working with the Homeless Coalition on the transition. I am hoping that once the Homeless Coalition gets through their transition and gets settled down, that they will be able to take this project back. So I just wanted to let the board know, just in case you get any questions in the community about it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Any questions?
Another one is coming out of our Auditor Controller's Office. This will be handled by Joe Paul Gonzalez, and this is with regards to the CAFR.
Good morning, Chair, Board of Supervisors.
Good morning.
I'm happy to announce that the comprehensive annual financial report that is compiled and completed in our department this year was completed and audited and submitted on March 31st, the absolute last date to be able to submit it to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse and to the State Controller's Office. And however, as County Council likes to remind me that, you know, what do they call the last person who is a student at the Harvard Medical Law School on graduation day?
A doctor.
That's right. So, you know, we were able to.
That's pretty impressive. You get an
I see Supervisor Munzer has heard that one before. So, you know, we have for next year, we have plans to, actually, I want to, you know, back up a little bit. And this year, that would not have happened without the help of the board in assisting me by getting a private a CPA firm come in and helping us to prepare the CAFR, Hayashi and Whalen. So I'm very appreciative of Mike Nolan. In fact, a little later, Mike will be presenting the GASB 68 PowerPoint presentation. So we're fortunate that that we were able to get it completed and submitted. And I'd like to also thank the Mike and Betty Grace, the independent auditors for the county. They did a tremendous job in getting all their questions answered that they had. We answered those questions. They had many questions, a lot of changes, and at the end of the day, they were satisfied that the CAFR really represented fairly the financial condition of the county. So, thank you.
Joe Paul, I know there were a lot of behind-the-scenes work, a lot of, you rolled up your sleeves, and, in the 11th hour, I know you had a lot of work to do, and I wanted you to know that we appreciate all of that to meet that timeline. So, no, it's not easy, and especially when you're short-staffed. So, thank you. Supervisor Munzer?
Joe Paul, I just want to echo the chair's sentiment. I appreciate all the hard work that you did. I know you were working late hours to make sure that we did get our CAFR done and on time. And I certainly do appreciate it also.
Thank you very much.
Supervisor De La Cruz?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Munzer and myself serving on the audit committee, we really do like to appreciate all the work you've done, Joe, and the rest of the members of the team. But like you and I think the same, okay, this year's over, let's start working on next year. And,
yes.
And hopefully, Supervisor Munzer, we could have a meeting maybe later this month, early next month, to start planning for next year. And one of the discussion items that we should discuss is a CPA package, other things, and I want to make sure we have a smooth transition for next year.
Yes, that's high on our agenda to have a meeting at the end of this month after we've had, given the CPA firms, both the independent auditor and the CPA consultants that are helping us, an opportunity to get through their tax season, because they're right in the heart of their tax season, and by the time the April 15th comes along, they're going to be exhausted after that that date. So they're going to take a little time off, and then at the end of the month we'll regroup and talk about a plan of implementation to ensure that the CAFR is not not something that starts late in the year, but instead we start early. In fact, we're talking about doing a mini CAFR for the board's review on a quarterly basis, so that every quarter the board sees the financial statements of the county from the auditor's perspective, so that by the time the fourth quarter comes along, that there's not a heck of a lot of work to do,
To be done.
in relation to the the total year. But that's going to that's going to take staff, and as we build the staff back up, as things get better in the county revenue, from a revenue perspective, we'll be able to do those things. But we certainly have a plan of action to ensure that this is not a crisis every time we have to complete the CAFR.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
And not too many people are probably aware, but we're in the middle of an ERP project that takes a tremendous amount of time, and Joe Paul has been spearheading that. So he was able to do both the CAFR and that. So I want to give a special thanks to Joe Paul, as well as staff. There's a lot of work at Public Works, Behavior Health, many of the departments. So I'd like to give a thanks to the department heads and the staff for working on this to get this done, because without them, we wouldn't have been able to get this done.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Another question?
No, well, one last comment. I just think the message needs to go out to all the department heads that your efforts to do a quarterly CAFR, mini CAFR, is important to the audit committee and I think this full board, and that I encourage all the department heads to assist you in any way they can to make sure that happens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next department head we have on our list is Nora Conte, and she's our librarian, and she's gonna be commenting on the CNET grant. Nora?
Good morning, board members, members of the public, and the public viewing us at home. Good morning to everyone. Well, I have some exciting news for you. With your approval, the library department sought to acquire a $30,000 grant from the state library. We submitted that proposal so that we would be able to acquire funds to facilitate the needed infrastructure for our new technology that will be coming forth. Hopefully, it'll all be here by the 31st and completed of December. So we look really, really good. It passed the first committee, and it's waiting for signature at the State Library. So as soon as I know that it's been signed on the dotted line, I will let you know. But thank you for your permission to go ahead and submit that grant. That'll be very helpful to us. On another note, as you know, National Library Week will be this coming week, the 12th through the 19th. Quite a few activities are going to be taking place. We're going to have our annual Customer Appreciation Day. We have some other type of programs on art, on resume writing, express yourself in music, and express yourself in writing. So I brought some of these flyers out so that you can have a copy for yourself. We will be launching a very exciting program, our new service with our library, and that is the Overdrive program. We will be able to download some of the bestsellers of our library's website onto digital devices. And during National Library Week, we will be able to provide training for the public so that they will also learn how to be able to download their these new online ebooks. There is a program also that is called Laundry to Literacy, and I'll be letting you know more about that, but so far so good. We're going out in partnership with First Five, the Women's Club, and the Friends of the Library, and placing materials, reading materials for children so that when they're at the laundromat, they can read books and take them home. And that's going really well. In addition, we've started a new partnership with Gavilan College Community Services Program, and I'll be letting you know more about that as it develops. The other program that we will be launching during National Library Week is this. It's called, and I brought an example for you, and you may keep it and give it to whomever you would like. It is called 1,000 Books Before First Grade, and it does have milestones that that parents that read to their children, children can read. You know, there's some children that are reading by 4 and 5, so they keep track. So hopefully, that before first grade they'll have 1,000 books, and some of the kids are really, parents are reading to them. They're enjoying the material. So we hope that many of our children in San Benito County, in order to be able to help build that platform of academic achievement, will have that base where they can start to learn how to read. So that's also that is being launched. I would like to have just a real big thank you to the Women's Club, the Friends of the Library, for their partnership, especially in the annual Champagne Tea event that took place, and this partnership that is exploring other possibilities. So I didn't mean to take up too much of your time, but there are some very exciting things that are happening in the library. Thank you once again for your leadership and your support of library services.
Nora, thank you. You do a wonderful job, and it doesn't go unnoticed. The programs that you bring, the excitement, you're always looking for ways to bring new programs and new monies to us, so thank you.
Well, you're welcome, and one of the things that I say to the staff, you know, the San Benito way is you never give up.
That's right. Supervisor Bertella?
You know, with our clerk passing this out, this little book, it's a great idea for parents to, you know, push their child along in their reading skills and see what they're reading and the progression of that. It would be kind of neat to have when you become an adult to have a record of what you read as a kid and how you improved over a period of time. So I highly encourage, you know, folks to, you know, if you have a young child that you're trying to teach to read, which is a very important skill, and having it in hand rather than just on a computer is kind of a neat to have, I think. We're getting to this technology where we don't have things in our hands anymore. This really is something special. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much once again, Board of Supervisors, for being ambassadors for library services.
Thank you, Nora.
Madam
Oh, Supervisor De La Cruz?
Nora, I'll make it real quick. I want to thank you for this book. My wife and I were talking about starting to read to our grandkids, and so I got it. Thank you very much. I'll come see you when this book is full.
Thank you so much.
CAO?
Yeah, we have another department announcement that's coming out of our tax treasurer's office. We have Mary Lou Andretti to give a brief department head announcement.
Good morning, Madam Sister Chair and board members and the public. I just want to let you know that because of the cuts in the tax collector's office, the board approved that we close on Fridays so we can catch up. But this year, the 10th, which is the second due date of property tax, falls on Friday. So we will be open to the public on that day till 5 o'clock so we can receive payments.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Okay, so we have a few more, so bear with me here. We have an introduction of our fire chief. I'd like to introduce the board as well as the public, if you wouldn't mind stepping up. We have Bill Geringer. He is our interim fire chief with the city of Hollister.
Thank you, Ray. Members of the board, it's a pleasure to be here. I've lived in Hollister for 30 years, born and raised in San Jose, worked for San Jose Fire Department for 29 years, and then I had the privilege of being the fire chief here from 2001 to 2007. So I do know the area, know the town, know the department. You have a very dedicated department of firefighters and reserve firefighters that are striving every day to provide the best possible service available to you. It's a pleasure to work with them every day. They're really dedicated, and they work very, very hard. I'm used to, came from San Jose where we had 35 fire stations and 780 people, and coming to a smaller department was a real eye-opener for me to see how people can try to do the same job with a lot less people, a lot less resources. We're unique here because we're a city and a county that's a big county, but we don't have a lot of other cities in our county. And, in San Jose, you call mutual aid from other cities, and they come and they help you, and they're only 5 minutes away. Here, our nearest mutual aid is Gilroy and Salinas and Watsonville, and it takes a lot longer to get here. So the people that are working here every day work very hard to keep fires at a small level, and it's going to be a very busy wildland season. We've already had some wildland fires. Thank God it's raining out there. It's a real pleasure for us to see that. But the city of Hollister is in the recruitment phase for a fire chief. Bob Murray and Associates has been hired. The announcement for fire chief closes on the April 24th. So we're hoping that they interview sometime in May and maybe have a new chief on board sometime in June. So we're looking forward to trying to find somebody that will continue to let the department move forward and protect the city and the county and San Juan Bautista equally. And it's a pleasure to hold the fort until he gets here, or he or she gets here, I should say.
Well, welcome back, and we wish you the very best on behalf of the supervisors, and hopefully you'll stay in close connection with our CAO, and if there's any issues or
I
things
will.
we can help you with, we certainly will
I
do
will.
that.
And my wife's happy that I'm not in the house every day anyway. She's happy I went back to work.
Supervisor Botello?
Yeah, I'm just real, I believe our community is very fortunate to have somebody of your experience and leadership back at the helm, even if it's just for a short time. As the community knows, we've been working on trying to consolidate our efforts, the two cities and the county together, to provide a higher level of fire service at a more of a efficient, lower cost, hopefully for everyone. And there's some work to be done still, but I think you could handle the job and find ways for us to work well together. So I'm very happy that you're back for a few months anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we also have another announcement. This is coming out of our Ag Commissioner's office. We have a new employee. We're very excited to have her on board. Her name is Karen Overstreet. She comes with 20 years of ag experience. She worked at the County of Merced, and we're very happy to have her on board. So I'd like to introduce you to the board as well as to the public. If you wouldn't mind stepping up to the podium, Karen.
Thank you very much. I just would like everyone to know how pleased I am to have been selected as your new Ag Commissioner. I want to thank the board for the confidence that you've placed in me and for giving me this opportunity to serve the county. You know, it appears county Ag Commissioner offices operate in a very similar fashion, and even though I've only been on the job here now for 1 week, I think the transition has been very comfortable, and I'm really enjoying working with my staff and the public.
Well, we welcome you.
Thank
Welcome you and to the family of San Benito County.
Thank you very
We wish
much.
you the very best. Okay. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Supervisor Munzer.
I met with Karen the other day, last week. We sat down and I offered to drive her around and show her our our vineyards. And so we'll set a date and we'll tour our wine industry.
Yes, I'm certainly looking forward to learning more about the county and getting out and about with you in your districts would just be a great opportunity for me.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Madam Chair, we have one last announcement. This is with regards to Governor Brown and the executive order that he actually sent out on April 1st. This is actually B-29-15, calling for a mandatory statewide reduction in water use, and announced a suite of new state actions to conserve water, in essence creating a enforcement of water usage within our community. So on April the 10th, we'll be meeting with the water board officials via a phone call and discussing particularly a couple of items, focusing on provisions 2, 5, 6, and 7 within the executive order to look at that. And so we'll be coming back to your board as well as to the public to explain kind of what the executive order is and put into motion what we need to for conserving water within our county, within our community. We'll also have the water districts as well be present with that.
Okay, very good. Will this be on our April 21st? Is that the plan, or sometime in the...
Yeah, sometime. I'm hoping April 21st we'll have that on board. Yeah, we should have enough time to put that on.
Good. Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, I just want to thank the CAO for that announcement. I actually had a whole page written out about, hopefully we can get a report or an oral report, because as the executive order states that the 25% mandated reduction in water usage would come from the 400 local water supply agencies. So I was just hoping we could get a report or an oral report from what I would assume would be the Water Resources Association of San Benito County. Just to see how this reduction is going to impact our residents, but really more importantly, how we can as a county work together to help accomplish that reduction. You know, I mean, because obviously all the decisions we make when we talk about a general plan update and new growth, that certainly is going to have some type of impact on the 25% reduction. So, thank you.
Yeah.
And if you want to continue with, if you're done, CAO Espinosa,
done.
if you want to continue with any other board announcements, you have the floor.
Yeah, that was my only announcement was, you know, if we could get some type of report or,
Yeah.
you know, but it sounds like we are, so
Yeah.
I'm good. Thank you.
And this is a good segue to putting Supervisor Rivas on the governance committee and replacing me. I know later on the agenda, we'll have the LAFCO, but we're going to trade off, so I will just officially announce that he will be on the governance committee with Supervisor Botello. So, okay?
Good.
Thank you. Supervisor De La Cruz.
Yes, the only item I have is I'm challenging my fellow supervisors, join me and walk in red high heels this Saturday. You know, ceremonies and you know, get together. We'll start at 10 a.m. in the morning. You know, get used to our new shoes, and then the race or the walk starts at 11 o'clock, and I'll be walking downtown for about an hour, and then 12 o'clock, make sure you have a loved one that has ice for you because your feet will hurt. So, that's it. Again, I'll challenge my fellow supervisors.
Okay, the challenge is on. Thank you, Supervisor De La Cruz. Supervisor Botello.
I have nothing this morning, thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Munzer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I received notice from the Monterey Bay Unified Air Pollution Control District that they have released the notice of availability of Air District budget, rule revision, and policy document and public meeting schedule. The district is considering permit fee changes, and the first workshop will be here in these chambers at 11 o'clock on Friday, April the 10th. So I just want to make sure everybody that would be affected in the county by our fees is aware of this, and that is all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. And for me, I want to thank our Chief Probation Officer for inviting us to the unveiling of the Probation Department wall. And what this is, if you haven't seen it, if you want to take the opportunity to see it at some point, it is a history of the Probation Department. Beautifully done by his staff, unveiled yesterday, and so it really is nice to see that it goes back for San Benito County, I believe it's 1907, but in the United States, back to 1841. And what was really nice is that yesterday when they unveiled it, I didn't know this, but there were 2 women that served as the chief probation officers for San Benito County in the early 1900s. So that was quite exciting to see. And then the fight for the Panoche Valley Solar Farm continues. We met, thank you CAO Espinosa, thank you Supervisor De La Cruz. We had a meeting with Congressman Farr last week, and this is to help us to get the permitting process moving along at the federal level. So we didn't get any promises, but certainly we got the support and recommendations that we meet with General Troy at the, I'm trying to remember, the Corps of Engineers. And so we plan to do that this week, I go to Sacramento to meet with the Secretary of the Natural Resources, John Laird, and with a developer as well. And then on the 16th of this month, we will be meeting in Fresno with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife Director to try to get the notice, first of all, that we are wanting this to move forward, that we are in need of this project, and so we are, like I said, we're fighting the fight. So we're hoping that we can get some response and action at those levels. And I also attended the board meeting of all the boards in San Benito County. The school boards, the city council was invited, the hospital boards. We attended a joint board meeting, and Dr. Anthony Mohammed had the presentation, and he talked about building cohesive. So it's not just about the school culture, but cultures in agencies and departments, building cohesive teams, creating clarity, organizational health. He said that is the way for success in most government agencies. So Anyway, that's my report. Thank you. We'll move on to consent agenda items. Clerk of the Board, do we have any items that are being pulled by the public?
No.
Okay, any items that the board would like to pull? I have two. Item number 5, just for clarity on the percentage, and then item number 8 for clarity on dates. So I will pull item 5 and 8.
Motion to approve amended consent.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, I pulled item number 5 because it makes mention of a 5% for our local dealers, local services, but I think that that is 10%. As long as the supplier provides a 10%. And I just want clarity because later on in the next item that deals with buying local mentions 10%. So I want the public to know what that percentage is.
I believe I actually cited a section in the purchasing manual. And I think it was, yes, it's on the title of the agenda transmittal. And it was competitive bid process as per preference for local business, section 13-11 county purchasing ordinance. That was the most recent purchasing ordinance that I had on file, and it indicated a preference for local businesses that were within 5% of the next highest bid.
Okay, so 5% is what it had on there, but the following one has 10. Are we, I'm hoping that it is 10%. It gives them a little more.
Unless there's a purchasing ordinance that I'm not aware of that went beyond 2011.
So this actually, I apologize, Alan, it is 10%, Chair. What is currently in our manual is 5%. It just hasn't been updated to what was most recently codified, and this will be something that will go out in our new CAO quarterly newsletter, clarifying that it is actually still 10%. We are updating the manual, and to have some more clarity on how to apply that local preference. So I do apologize. I apologize, Alan.
All right, so it is 10%.
No problem.
Supervisor, no, that's okay.
Part of the issue of being here for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure when we discussed it as a board. I know it's been a topic at different times, and I think at one time we were looking at something maybe even a little bit higher at 15, but and this is where county council, I think, clarified the state statutes. Anything more than 10% is just not allowed either, but that's my recollection.
Yeah, and so we're at the maximum, and Sarah did clarify that, so we want the public to know, especially suppliers locally, that they do have that 10% leeway to where we can approve an item that we're purchasing up to the 10% variance. So,
Well, as with myself, and I can speak for the supplier, they're cognizant of a 5% percentage range. So, and it's our local provider, Tiffany Ford, so.
Okay.
I think it would probably be helpful if that information did go out.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Ellen.
Thank you.
Okay. Any comments from the public regarding this item? I'll bring it back to the board, and I will make a motion that we approve per staff recommendation.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, and item number 8, the reason I pulled that one is simply because there was a date of when our prior director left, and I believe it speaks to 2015, and it really was 2014, if I am not mistaken. So I just want to make sure that correction is made. And that is on page number 68, I'm sorry. She resigned effective August, it should be August the 10th, 2014.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll make that correction.
Anyone from the public would like to address the board on this item? I'll bring him back, and I will make a motion. Any further discussion from the board? I will make a motion that we extend the appointment of Mary Gilbert as COG's interim executive director.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
Okay, now we'll move on to our first public hearing. Council?
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. I will turn the hearing over to the Assistant County Counsel, Barbara Thompson.
This is for the Water Conservation Ordinance for CSA 31. On April 6th, which is yesterday, I received a letter from their Board of Directors indicating support of the ordinance. They were not able to be here at the meeting today, so let me pass this out to the board, and there's copies in the back. Okay. In 2014, the board already adopted a water conservation ordinance for CSA 31. The allocations that were set forth in Exhibit B of that ordinance were only valid through the end of February of 2015. In March 1st of 2015, we started a new water year. We had to wait until the allocations were final to determine how much water has been allocated to CSA 31. There's been no increase in the water that's been allocated. In fact, there was a decrease from the allocations of last year, thus necessitating a new water conservation ordinance. So let me read the title of this ordinance for the record. The numbers have been worked out with CSA 31 and been reviewed by their Board of Directors of the Homeowners Association, and they're asking that we continue to have a water conservation ordinance that imposes restrictions both on the agricultural and domestic water use, just to make sure that the water is used equitably and reasonably by all the residents within CSA 31. So the title of the ordinance is an ordinance of the County of San Benito establishing a water conservation program for the area served by County Service Area Number 31 Stonegate for the 2015-2016 water year and amending Exhibit B of Ordinance 927. So I'd ask the board to open the public hearing, and then after the close of the public hearing, to make the CEQA findings set forth in Exhibit A to the AIT, and then make the motion that's set forth in the AIT.
Okay, thank you very much, Barbara. At this time, I would like to open the public hearing. Anyone from the public that would like to address the board?
Yes, I have John Rose.
Good morning. My name is John Rose. I'm a resident within the jurisdiction of CSA 31. First of all, I'd like to commend the Board of Supervisors for, in fact, not only extending the ordinance, but also reducing it in light of the severe water drought that California is experiencing. However, I do have one lament. The ordinance that was passed in July of 2014, while looking good on paper, was never really actively enforced. The downside to that is that the residents that live within that CSA 31 were cognizant of that. So there were a small percentage of people that were using water aggressively, wastefully, almost to the point of where there was no ordinance or there was no drought, almost to the point of making a mockery of the ordinance itself. What I would, for whatever reason, I'm not sure, but the staff of the Water Commission, I probably had this wrong, but let's just use the word county elected not to enforce it. I hope this year is different. And what I mean by that is that rather than having schools, if you will, if you go over allocation, have financial fines to the point where the scofflaws of last year fully realize that there's consequences for their insolence, as well as giving a level playing field to the law-abiding, compliant residents that reside within CSA 31. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, I welcome anybody from the public to come up and address the board on this item. Barbara, is there a plan to address the concerns that this gentleman has expressed as far as the hearing?
We'll have to sit down with Public Works and the Homeowners Association Board and review the usage numbers. Because if there's a violation, then we can talk to code enforcement about enforcing that.
Okay. If there are no other public comments, I am going to close the public hearing, and I will ask the board. Any questions, Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To address that concern, And I don't see Joe in the audience, but I believe Public Works had been diligently over the last year replacing the water meters that, my understanding, were not quite functioning properly out there. So now we have a way of measuring the amount of water that is used by each property owner, whereas before we didn't have that ability and weren't able to really qualify when someone went over the allotted amount.
Yes.
So we have made strides to replace the water meters, and we will be able to, I think, know now when someone is going well over the.
Yes, that's true. That was a problem, that they were correcting a lot of the water meters last year, too.
Madam Chair, I have a question for Supervisor Munzer or staff, whoever may know, and enforcement, especially as we're, getting deeper in this drought. And I don't think you could shut off water to anyone, but, the fee structure is really a very good deterrent to overuse of water. Do we have in place the fee structure, or the CSA 31, the fee structure that would actually penalize people that would be overusing their water?
No, we don't have that yet.
Well,
We need to,
and
and we'd have to go through a Prop 218 process to implement that. It has been discussed, though, with staff.
Yeah,
So we have been discussing
and
implementing
in order
that.
to do that, you have to have the functioning water meters. Now that we have that in place, we really should, especially if that's what the wishes are of the CSA, maybe put some sort of tiered fee structure in place that penalizes people that waste water.
The last I heard on that issue is that they were trying to collect the majority signatures from the residents to determine whether they would support a new Prop 218 process. And I hadn't heard whether the last I heard that they had not collected enough majority signatures, but we can touch base with the CSA working group on that to figure out whether we should still proceed forward with that. And also, we have to make sure that any fee structure that's gradated also is defensible, that the higher costs reflect the higher costs of acquiring additional water, too. So,
Well,
yeah. And we do have the provisions to put, even though we wouldn't probably, we could put flow restrictor devices on these homes that are using too much water, as well as the administrative fees.
Sometimes advisories really don't work. You just have to hit the pocketbook. And, the San Felipe water system, surface water deliveries is going to be negligible for everybody. And, the wells, they don't have that great of a well. I would be very concerned if I lived in that neighborhood.
Supervisor Munzer?
Yeah, I just want to address Supervisor Patello's comments that Barbara, Public Works, and myself have been working with the board for the Homeowner Association of Stonegate and working through some of these issues. And I think we all are aware that these issues need to be. Part of the problem was these homes were sold with the promise of unlimited water use. And so it's taking some re-education that that's just not true anymore.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? Okay, bring it back then for a decision.
Madam Chair, I'd be happy to make a motion, and Barbara or somebody help me with it.
Make the CEQA findings set forth on Exhibit A to the AIT, and make the motion to accept introduction, waive reading, and adopt ordinance number 935.
Okay, that is my motion.
Okay, there's a motion. I'll second.
That's second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, Barbara, you want to just stay there for the
Yes.
second public hearing? Go ahead.
Okay, this is regarding the tree ordinance. The last time that the board heard it was February 17th, where we presented a draft tree ordinance that would replace the moratorium. After that, pursuant to the planning, government code, zoning law, we took it to the planning commission for their review and recommendation to the board, which is a requirement. It was heard by the planning commission on February 18th. They had made some changes at that planning commission meeting. They also wanted it to be reviewed by the Park and Rec Commission, so we had it taken to the Park and Rec Commission on March 10th and back to the planning commission on March 18th. As a result of that process, there's been a few changes that have been made to the proposed ordinance. So those are all set forth on the redlined version that's contained in the board packet. But the main changes is that there's been deletion of the sunset clause. The Planning Commission recommends that the ordinance be permanent and that they believe that if there's a need to change the ordinance in the future, that can be done through the normal process. We changed some definitions in the urban residential, changed the definition of yard, the front yard, backyard. As a result of comments added by the Parks and Rec Commission, there's a definition of trees of special protection, and it's set forth in the staff report. There's a provision that allows the director to allow a permit request to be reviewed directly by the planning commissioner. Planning commission when 3 or more trees are going to be removed, or when it's associated with the development permit, instead of having the planning director make that decision, then being appealed to the planning commission. And the trees of special protection are the heritage trees, which are trees which a trunk diameter of 36 inches or greater, 4.5 feet from the ground. A tree which is shown to be preserved on a development plan. A tree required to be planted as a mitigation or replacement, or a landmark tree, which is a tree or grove of trees designated by resolution of the Board of Supervisors to be of historical or cultural value or an outstanding specimen or unusual or native species, and or of significant community benefit. I've kind of shortened that definition. That basically allows the board to come back later and determine which type of trees or whether any landmark trees should be protected. It just gives, right now, it mainly gives protection to the trees that are 36 inches or greater, and the way that that affects the ordinance is those trees could not be removed without a permit, even if they're within the fully enclosed back or side yard, which other trees that are within the back or side yard are exempted from the ordinance. In addition, trees of special protection would always require a permit for removal. It would not be subject to and with the findings set forth in Section 215, and they couldn't be removed without going through that process, even if it falls within the 1 tree for every 5 years. So those are the 2 key areas where the trees of special protection kick in. So those are the main changes. Let me read the title of the ordinance for the record. It's an ordinance adopting a permanent tree protection ordinance by amending Article 7, Tree Protection of Chapter 25.29 General Requirements of Title 25 Zoning of the San Benito County Code, establishing regulations on the removal of protected trees to protect and preserve mature trees in the RM and R1 zones of San Benito County. And we'd ask that the board hold the public hearing or open the public hearing, and then the motion would be set forth below. I do note that there was one typo in the ordinance where Section 25.29 should be labeled .211. On the ordinance, it's actually 201. It wasn't renumbered like the other sections were renumbered. With that change, I'd just open it up for the board's consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I will open up the public hearing. Clerk of the board.
First speaker is Patty Spears.
Good morning. My name is Patty Spears. I'm a resident of San Benito County, formerly Monterey County. I'd like to thank the board in hearing the concerns of the citizens of San Benito County. A lot of work, time, research, and thought has gone into this matter since October of 2014 when it was first introduced. Time and time again, the board has heard concerns of the citizens who have asked that this resolution be passed, and now the Parks Department is on board, according to the Planning Commission meeting that I attended most recently. We need this resolution to pass to save our trees. And the reason why we need to save our trees is to keep our county beautiful. We want to see green. We want a greenscape versus dirt and cement. We need to preserve our property values. You know, they've been kind of doing this, and we want to get it back up there. We need to encourage responsible development, the key word being responsible. And we also need to preserve our air quality. Not only that, but we also need to prevent erosion issues. In closing, I encourage the board to permanently pass this resolution without a sunset clause, which has already been deleted, and save our quality of life. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Ed Franks.
Thank you, supervisors, for allowing me to speak to you. And thank you for the rain, although I suspect in future years you should pass that ordinance a little earlier. I've been here only 3 years, unlike some of the previous speakers who are long-term residents, so I'm a newbie. But this is the 20th community I've lived in. All previous 19 were either because I lived at home with my family or it was dictated by work. This is the first one I've chosen. And I would not live anywhere else. This is a wonderful place. I spend most of my time outdoors now since I've retired. And fancy myself a naturalist. I probably am the least qualified person in the entire world who calls himself that. But I do enjoy everything outdoors, including our wildlife, our trees, other plants that depend on those trees. I prepared a list of birds that I've observed in the county. It's heavily, may I distribute this to the supervisors? Thank you. It's heavily weighted towards Ridgemark because that's where I live and that's where I take my walks. I would like to expand into the southeastern parts of the county, which I think are fascinating. We have our own national park. How many counties have that? And as soon as I finish my water-saving lawn project, which will probably happen about 2 years after I die, I want to get out into the rest of the county and see more. You can do what you want with those, make paper airplanes if you like, or share them with the grandkids. But it's a wonderful place, and part of that is that most of those depend on trees in some part of their life cycle. Not all. Condors very indirectly, for instance. But we don't need to degrade our environment. San Jose and Los Gatos, where I've previously lived, both have tree ordinances, and if there's anybody who complains, they are a tiny minority. When I go down to Southern California, LA and Orange County, it makes even the San Jose area look like a garden. I do not want a big parking lot with a few buildings in the middle of it. Nobody who lives up here wants that I know of. Development is not retarded by those ordinances there, and we have much more room for that. I think we need this. I think we'll preserve our quality of life without hurting any of our economic development. Probably enhance it because more people will like being here. And so, based on the concerns of our residents and our critters, I encourage you to pass this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
John Janetto.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm a resident of Ridgemark, and one of the only reasons I moved there were for two reasons. One, the open space that I enjoy where I live, and the golf facilities. And the open space with the trees, the bird sanctuaries that we have there in Ridgemark should never be disturbed. That property should remain the way it is. The trees that should come down by this ordinance should come down. The ones that shouldn't should be saved. And for every tree that they take down in our community, they should replace with another one. So I would hope that the Board of Supervisors would support our community. And the truly only landmark of Hollister is really in peril at this point. So for all you supervisors, I hope you would definitely vote in favor of this issue and this tree ordinance, because it's good for us and good for the entire community. Thank you for your time.
Next speaker is Bill Healy.
Yes, my name is Bill Healy. I live in Hollister. First of all, I'd like to thank the whole board. You've spent a lot of time as council and the whole administration on working on this issue. And you've been very supportive all the way up until the last minute. And I'm just hoping at the last minute it stays the same and you pass this ordinance. I sort of parallel it. I'm the family's genealogist. And what I'm doing is I'm writing for my future grandkids and their children, because when I die, my mom has died, that history is gone. And it can never probably be found again because you don't have it firsthand. And I look at it the same way with the trees. If we let too many trees go down here 10 years, 15 or 20 years from now, those kids are going to have to live in that without maybe as many trees. I came from San Carlos, has a tree ordinance. One, they had to protect the redwood trees, and the other one was white oak trees. And I lived in an area with white oak trees, and it was so great to go around that. We had some 300 to 500-year-old oak trees that were protected and saved so that everybody could enjoy the atmosphere underneath it, the beauty that they have. So I just wish that you would continue the positiveness that this whole board has shown on the tree ordinance and make it final today. And I do appreciate everything you've done. Thank you.
Penny Betancourt.
Good morning. I want to thank you for allowing us the opportunity to address you again on the tree ordinance, the San Benito County tree ordinance. Some people have said it's Ridgemark's tree ordinance. Yes, we're residents of Ridgemark, but we're also residents of San Benito County. You have a number of planned unit developments that are increasing out into the county. And in those planned units, you will be asking for trees to be planted, you'll be asking for parks. This ordinance will protect those future trees, those trees that will be in parks and along streetways. I'm sorry. You would think, there's not going to be a developer in those communities, but there will be boards, there'll be neighbors, and there may be developers, we don't know. We are a community that's under a situation of being bullied. This tree ordinance isn't just about that. The trees have paid dearly for that bullying. They just got caught up in the middle of it, but it is an eye-opener to what can happen anywhere in San Benito County, and for those developments that you're planning on in the future that will have trees and parks. So I urge you today to please continue your support for the San Benito County tree ordinance. Thank you.
Pamela Kovich.
Good morning. I'm Pamela Kovacic, and I'm a Ridgemark resident for close to 3 years now. I've lived in a town where there basically were no trees. The majority of people that come from other areas would pass through that town to go to Monterey, to go to Carmel, where there are tree ordinances. And it's really not a Ridgemark issue. It really is a county issue that affects everyone. If there were a grove of trees that needed to be removed in the development that's being worked on Fairview, I like to think that the public would have the same reaction to clear cutting of trees as what happened in our neighborhood. And yes, trees are essential to life, but they also make a positive contribution to our emotional and psychological states. So that's something that we need to consider. Neighborhoods with trees have lower incidence of crime. And property owners need to think about how their actions affect their neighbors, the environment, and future generations. I don't have children, but I have relatives, I have young cousins, nieces and nephews that will benefit by growing up with these beautiful trees that are surrounding us here, just this building. And to lose that would really be a tragedy. The ordinance isn't overburdensome, I don't feel. It shouldn't be limited to future development. And the lands that are in dispute where we live, although they're privately owned, they were in fact used by the public. They're used by the public now. So we're addressing this issue, looking at it from a long-term perspective, and we want to prevent the clear cutting from happening again. So I would ask respectively that you consider what the Planning Commission has recommended and eliminate the sunset provision from this ordinance. And thank you for your time again.
Okay, I welcome anybody from the public to address the board on this issue, this item. Okay. Mr. Jones?
Thank you, Madam. Checking this over, and I noted that, and as Barbara mentioned, that you've removed the sunset clause. I'd recommend that you put it back in and let a future board make it permanent. Once you make a ordinance such as this permanent, particularly one that has a revenue stream, which you folks are always looking for, it's extremely difficult to correct it. So leave a sunset clause in. Let a future board make a determination of whether it is worthy to make it permanent or not. I was just, again, noticing the transmittal you have there. It took 51 pages. What is this, the fourth, fifth time that this has been up and you've had it in your book? You've got 51 pages in your transmittal there. And that, how many copies did you make? How many times has it been up? How many trees did it take to just generate the paper for this ordinance? Are we getting to the point of diminishing returns? Again, the only comment I'd really have is the sunset clause. You ought to keep it in there for 4, 8 years. Let another board determine it. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Anyone else from the public? Okay, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board.
Well,
Supervisor Batella?
thank you, Madam Chair. We have a very tough job up here. You know, sometimes I think we all have discussed with our friends and family, last thing we need as a people is another law, another ordinance, and, but what has happened in the Ridgemark community with the trees, and someone mentioned, you know, the loss of property values or how it's associated with the adjacent landscaping, really emphasized to me anyway that we need something like this in place. This board has the experience to had observed what has happened. Supervisor Munzer worked very hard with staff to bring this forward, this ordinance. And I think it's time to make it permanent. I think, you know, being a tree person myself, not just because I'm an orchardist, but as a boy admiring trees, going up Harmony Hills and seeing the grand oak trees up the San Juan Canyon, it was something that I personally enjoyed seeing. And the habitat that it supplies to the nature up there and the importance of that, it's really special. And, you know, banyan trees in Hawaii, the majestic, it's just majestic. And what it means to us locally, and the list of birds that the gentleman supplied us is, I've seen those birds out there playing golf, and that's one, I'm not out there just playing golf. I enjoy the wildlife, the turkeys and doves, ducks. And so I'm going to support this today, and I think it's a good thing. It does keep an element of a rural open space feeling to our community, which is important. And I'm on board with this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Barbara, I want to thank you for all your hard work on this. I know you spent a lot of time on it. And I want to say that on my own ranch, I'm noticing a lot of oak trees that are just naturally dying, and they're dying because of the drought. So we are losing trees, and I think anything that we can do to protect the trees that we do have needs to be put in place. There is some question about some of the land out there in this development, whether it's actually open space or if it's, if it was deeded as open space or whether it is still able to be used for anything that the property owner wants to do with it. Those issues need to come before the county, and those issues need to be resolved also. We have a lot of other issues going on with this project we're going to have to address, and I think this is one of the first steps. So definitely has my support.
Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, I think we've had some comments on this for, a number of some meetings in the past, but this is something I certainly support. It's unfortunate that it just seems that, I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues when we were on our way to a regional meeting, and we were talking about why things just blow up here in San Benito County, whether it's a solar power project in South County, whether it's this tree ordinance in Ridgemark, whether it's fracking, or it just seems like every little issue in San Benito County just blows up to be something the world's going to blow up if we don't solve every single issue. And this is one of them. I think that this is a tough issue, and like I said in some comments in the past, that this certainly is more of an issue between the local residents there and the business owners of Ridgemark. But certainly there is a community need to protect trees in this community, and I think that this is an important ordinance, and I have no problem moving forward and approving this today. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Supervisor De La Cruz?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I also support that we need to protect our trees. It's very important. However, I was in favor of the putting a 5-year moratorium, but if we can meet the objective, continue to protect the trees, I'm okay. I'm willing to go in that direction.
Okay. I will be the only one that will not be supporting this ordinance, and I'm going to just reiterate what I have said in the past. I have over maybe 50 to 100 trees in my property. Nobody asked me to plant them, nobody paid me to plant them, but now I have to pay to remove them. I believe that this ordinance was a result, and I want to say that I value trees, obviously, because I planted them. I think this was reactive to an isolated issue, which was certainly a valid issue, and it should have been specifically designed for future development in private and public properties. I believe this is going to add unnecessary burden to community folks, to residents, to seniors, to people with limited incomes. I believe that it's going to add additional work to our staff and possibly additional cost to San Benito County. So with that being said, I will not be supporting this ordinance, but I appreciate my supervisors, and certainly, it's a majority of the board to decide. So I will bring it for a motion then.
Barbara, if you help me make the
Yes.
motion again?
It would be make the CEQA findings set forth on Attachment A of the AIT, accept introduction, waive further reading of the ordinance, and adopt ordinance 936.
That is my motion.
Oh, and last but not least is order that the display ad be published.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Passes 4-1. Thank you. We're going to take a short break. And we'll be back in about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you are.
I gotta run upstairs. If I'm not back when the meeting starts.
Yeah.
I just made it black. It's just like this. I don't want them to see me signing in. It distracts people. Yeah. Yeah. I know, pictures of my
So
little
just
kitties.
open it up. There's going to be 3 PowerPoint presentations, so just
Okay.
open it up and then just minimize it, and then they can pick their own.
Okay. There it is.
That's the new way to go at it. Delay everything in sequence.
Okay. Just curious.
Yep, that's true.
Mark Tiernan with SCS Development.
I gotta stay awake to a presentation. He was a sugar high, and then if I crash afterwards. I asked for the presentation, so I guess I should stay awake.
It's open already.
In fact, I like the see the progress.
There we go.
Tina was nice enough to do those 5.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Talk about red masks.
Yeah, and I need one for myself and then one for the 2 of them.
My signature.
There's 2 there, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
At that time, they use a lot of electronic switches.
Yes. You want to join me?
That little ball must be a thermostat. And so when you thermostat, when you move the lever, what happens is the ball of mercury will fly over. And that way it's not going
Hey.
I know, I mean.
No, you.
You heard me saying out and up. I have not talked about
Yeah, I'll see if I can find that out. That's an interesting read.
I don't think we had turkeys on that list.
That is worth it.
Oh, yeah, I know they have turkeys in Ridgemark.
Did you find him, Jen?
All right.
Oh, no, Denise was looking for Supervisor Rivas, so we can get going.
Could.
Just let me know when I should write the check.
I guess everybody else is here. Are you waiting for Denise? You don't need Denise, right? Okay.
So you like my gold stuff?
Absolutely, yeah. No, Denise wants to try to get him, but I'm going to get started. Okay, we're going to continue. We're going to continue our regular meeting and start with our regular agenda. And I'll turn this over to our CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we're on our regular agenda this morning, item 18, and this comes out of our auditing office. This is with regards to the Governmental Accounting Standards Board-approved statement of 68, the GASB 68. And this particular item is primarily to improve financial reporting and improve transparency associated with pensions in government. So we're grateful enough to have Hayashi and Whalen, as well as Joe Paul Gonzalez, our auditor, here to give a presentation to the board as well as to the public. So, Joe Paul.
Thank you, Ray. Madam Chair, Board of Supervisors, as you know, GASB, which is the acronym for Governmental Accounting Standards Board, issues statements for state and local governments as guidance for the preparation of their financial statements for users of those financial statements. And in June of 2012, GASB 68 was adopted by the GASB board which is the accounting and financial reporting for pensions statement. And it significantly changed how we measure and report the long-term obligations and costs associated with pensions. And to give you a little bit more detail of related to what changed in GASB 68, the auditing committee asked that Hayashi and Whalen, Mike Nolan from Hayashi and Whalen, to come before the full board and give a presentation on the GASB 68 changes that will be required upon the county and really all local and state agencies for reporting of the CAFR or financial statements. At the end of the presentation, the board will be asked to adopt a measurement date, and I'll let Mike Nolan talk about what the significances are of that measurement date, because the board has an option to choose 2 dates. But without further ado, I'll allow Mike to come forward to the board.
Thanks a lot, Joe Paul. Just the arrow keys. Okay. So I wanted to spend just a few minutes talking about GASB 68 and the impact. We had an audit committee meeting with a couple weeks back where we were working on the CAFR preparation, and Supervisor Munzer had attended another board presentation where one of my colleagues had presented on this same topic. And he thought it was, really relevant and important for the rest of the Board of Supervisors to be able to just get an update on what this impact might have for the financial statements of San Benito County. As many of you know, most state and local governments, the most significant obligation that they have is their pension obligations to both their current and their former retired employees. For years, the accounting rules as promulgated by GASB have not required state and local governments to record that obligation for their pension liabilities on their books, so on their statement of net position or their balance sheet. So starting effective this fiscal year for the County of San Benito, the county, along with all the other state and local government agencies, are required to put that liability on the statement of net position. So just to give you a little idea of the impact for the county itself with this change, at June 30, 2014, the unfunded pension liability for the plans that the county sponsors, which are through CalPERS, was about $46.6 million. Now that number, when GASB 68 is adopted, is not going to be the exact same number because there's some different assumptions that are going to go into how this number is determined for GASB 68. They're determined by actuaries, so they take into account a number of different assumptions, the expected life of the plan participants, investment rate of returns, some of those types of things. But it's a pretty good starting point to get an estimate of what that impact is going to be. So if I look at your current June 30, 2014 financial statements, the total liabilities for just the government activities was only $26 million. So imagine adding another $46.6 million to that. It kind of gives you an idea of the impact to the county's financial statements. So for the obligations that represent when the standard is adopted, when that liability gets put on the books, the other side of the entry, as we call it in accounting talk, would be to the net position or the equity of the county. And that would go to the government activities, the unrestricted net position. So your unrestricted net position in government activities as of June 30, 2014 was $29.5 million. So that $46.6 million liability approximately is going to offset what you currently are showing as unrestricted assets, if you will. So it's actually put that in a deficit position when this entry is recorded. And then going forward, the county will continue to book the annual cost of funding the pension obligation. There's also some of the other key changes there'll be additional financial statement disclosures that are in the footnotes over and above what's currently provided there and additional supplementary information on that. There's also going to be some additional costs. The county's going to have to pay CalPERS to basically calculate their share of the proportionate net pension obligation that they'll be recording on the balance sheet, and then also annual on an ongoing basis. These are the different components that will be used to record the obligation every year. The net pension liability basically represents the plan assets less the estimated, again, determined by an actuary, liabilities of the plan, and then San Benito County's proportionate portion of that liability, and that's the piece that will be on the balance sheet. Again, we talked about the restatement of the net position, which will happen if you guys adopt this resolution. It would be your beginning opening balances, so it would be for the period beginning July 1, 2015, and it'll be reflected in your June 30, 2015 financial statements.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
So there'll be two items on the financials, right? There's one that's long-term, and the other one is the current expense.
Correct.
Okay.
So the long-term portion represents the total liability, both to fund. A portion of that would be current, obviously, as you would have a piece that would be used to fund the liabilities in the upcoming year for retired employees. And then obviously most of that would be long-term, because it takes into account all of the employees, both retired and current employees working for the county.
So the goal will be for the current operating to be more to offset the long-term negative, because once we make this entry, we'll actually be at a negative, right?
Right, and for that unrestricted net position balance for the governmental activities, it'd actually be in a deficit position. So the important reminder here is really, at the end of the day, the standard doesn't change the financial position of the county any more than before this standard will be adopted. You still have the same obligations. It's just how the accounting rules and requirements are requiring it to be reported in your financial statements.
Oh, hold on a minute, Madam Chair. Hold on.
Yes, go ahead.
You saying it's not going to change, and I understand that because in the past it's been in the footnotes at the bottom. I understand that component. Right. But moving forward, we're actually hitting the equity section per se, and that's a negative as of right now. So shouldn't that hurt our purchasing power when we go out and buy financial vehicles that they're going to give us a higher interest rate?
Yeah, no, it may, and that's one of the other things that later in the presentation I want to cover is that it may impact the county's obligation to borrow in the future, the different types of bond ratings, as well as you mentioned, the county's perception from vendors as far as the financial strength. So it remains to be seen. You guys are in the same boat as all the other state and local governments who, to this point in time, have also not been required to record this as a liability on their financial statements. It has been, as you mentioned, though, a required disclosure in the footnote. So, most bond agencies were aware of this and would factor that into, their calculations in determining different types of ratings for bonds and whatnot. Another difference is, under the current policy expense, the annual pension contribution, the expense is recorded when it's funded. And going forward in GASB 68, the expense is recorded when it's earned. So as employees earn and accrue these benefits, it will be recorded. There's still a lot of unknowns related to the standard, how the assumptions and the allocations will be handled. CalPERS is coming out with the information in June of 2015, which will disclose how they're going to come up with the different assumptions that they use in determining the net pension liability for the different participants, and how the accounting for this will be impacted. The financial health of the county, again, does not change. The other piece I want to cover is the measurement dates. There's going to be a delay, a pretty significant delay in when information becomes available. So it's important when we talk about which measurement date the county should choose. If the county chooses a June 30, 2014 measurement date, basically to determine what that beginning pension liabilities is that they're going to put on their books, the information for that will not be available until June of 2015 at the earliest from CalPERS. So if you were to choose a June 30, 2015 implementation date, that wouldn't be available until the following June 2016 is what CalPERS has disclosed. So you've got a requirement to file your annual CAFR for the year ended June 30, 2015 at the latest by March 31 of 16. So it's really important to keep that in mind when you're determining what measurement date to use, and that's why in discussions with Joe Paul, we've recommended, and he's brought forward as part of the board resolution to choose June 30, 2014 as that date. A couple frequently asked questions that you should be aware of is, we talked about that negative equity that booking this initial pension obligation is going to cause. Is that going to cause a going concern in next year's audit? And I don't anticipate that will. I mean, obviously that's up to your independent auditors, but it should not impact that because it doesn't really change the inflows and outflows of your resources and cash for the next year. We touched on earlier the ability to borrow, the impact that it may have, and as well as when this information is going to become available. Any questions? I know we kind of covered a lot of information in a short period of time.
Any questions?
Well,
No? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll make several comments. First of all, Mike, I just want to thank you for your help with getting our CAFR done this year. I really appreciate all that you and your firm did. I've had the pleasure of seeing this presentation both at the AMBAG Board of Directors meetings and at the Air District meeting, and each time I learn a little bit more about it. We seem to be at the mercy of both GASB and CalPERS on this, because CalPERS, we are dependent upon them to give us information that will go on to our reports, and I guess because they have to do, all of a sudden they have to do these reports for every agency in the state, they're being inundated with requests. But it is, from what I can understand, even though we have two dates that we can use as our measurement date, in reality we only have June 30th, 2014, because of the fact that CalPERS would not be able to give us our information that we needed for 18 months after the measurement date. So to be able to do the CAFR for this coming year, we need to utilize the June 30th, 2014, as it seems that every other agency has been doing. I believe it was at AMBAG presentation, it was mentioned that we have to put on liabilities onto our financial statements, but we don't get to put on any assets that we have to offset it. So it does end up on the surface looking like a negative to our financials, and would be affecting our bonding ability, but every other agency in the state is going to be under the same situation. So hopefully the bonding companies will realize that and won't have any long-term effect. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Well, thank you for your presentation.
Great.
I'll open it up to the public, see if they have any questions. Anyone from the public? Or comments?
Thank you for the presentation. Sure, certainly. Marty Richard from Hollister. I'm always happy when the government decides that the government should show its liabilities. I can assure you, I don't know your personal income status or what you do with your money, but my bet is if any of you are investing your personal funds in the stock market and you go to some private corporation, you're going to want to know what their liabilities are. You're not just going to look at how much money they turned over last year and say, oh, they made a big profit. They'll make a big profit forever. So it's nice that we had it on the footnotes and now we're going to up it to something else. But I don't want you to worry, because for 99% of the population, they just walk around saying, well, we have a balanced budget, so everything must be fine, okay? Because they have no understanding of the fact that the law requires you to have a balanced budget. And the day before they went bankrupt, several of the cities and, maybe a county or two here in California had a balanced budget the day before. And the next day, Vallejo was bankrupt, okay? So that's what a balanced budget means. Absolutely nothing in the state of California, because you can run your liabilities up to no end and still have a perfectly balanced budget. Because as long as today's expenditures match today's input, you're okay. That's unfortunate, because I think the public doesn't understand what they're getting onto. I want the public to realize that we're going to show some number. It isn't going to be that big, not compared to some other numbers we've had, like our OPEB. But the people in the audience are also going to be responsible for those minus numbers at the state of California, for the teachers' retirement fund, which is terrible. And I understand why CalPERS can't get their report out for 18 months, even though they're worth billions and billions of dollars and have everything on a computer. It takes them 18 months to give you a liability number because so many of their executives are in jail. They can't find somebody who understands the system. So that's the kind of thing we're operating under here. It has nothing to do with you guys personally. But I'm just telling the public once and forever, which I do every time, is if you don't pay attention to what's going on financially, you will eventually wind up with the bill. And maybe God will be kind to you and you will leave this earth before the bill comes due, in which case your children and grandchildren will wind up with the bill. But somebody will wind up with the bill. It's not going away. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Marty. Any other comments from the public? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. Thank you. Joe Paul, do you have additional information, or?
No, the only item that I want to, thank you, Mike, add is that, while CalPERS has had its issues, the county pays on miscellaneous groups 15% employer rate, 15 plus. So, that's going to be reflected on the balance sheet, as Mike stated. And the whole purpose of this new standard is for transparency, as Marty mentioned. So you have counties that are 37 Act counties and cities that also fall under that act, where they have their own pension plans. For example, Contra Costa County, their employer rate is 90% of salaries. So if a person earns $100,000 a year, add another $90,000 for the cost of pension.
Wow.
So, while, CalPERS does have its issues, in comparison to, some of these other retirement plans, it's managed better. So, the GASB is intent on eventually going to a full accrual system where, just like private enterprise is required to be very transparent with their costs so that people can make wise decisions. And the purpose of this statement is so that this board and all jurisdictional boards at the state and local level can, as they make decisions, they consider, what their obligations truly are.
Thank you, Joe Paul. And Mr. Nolan, thank you for that great report. We appreciate that. We're all a little more educated on how it works, so thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Then we'll just, I'll ask them for a decision.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we adopt resolution number
2015-21. Okay, there's a motion
I'll second that.
and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Joe Paul, and thank you, Mr. Nolan. Okay, we'll move on to regular agenda item number 19, CAO Espinosa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, at our last board meeting, under public comment, there was a request made by Benchmark Communities to give a presentation to your board and the public today. So they had some concerns with regards to the city and county's tax sharing agreement, and they wanted to express their concerns to you. So today we have Holly Cordova here. I'd like to invite her and company up. They're going to give a small presentation to you, I believe a PowerPoint presentation, that they're going to present.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Jim Fletcher, and I am the division president for BMC Promise Way, which is a wholly owned company of Benchmark Communities and UCP, Inc. Our home offices are based in San Jose. And I was here, I think it was the 17th, as Ray alluded to, request your board hear us out on this significant point, and I very much appreciate you doing so. Thank you. Just a little background before I introduce Holly. Our company acquired some land in the city of Hollister, obviously the county, and we have been actively developing an 81-lot subdivision. We're marketing it under the name Homestead. You might have seen our signs around, and we're building models now and building homes, and I'm pleased to say the project's being very well received by the public. What we wanted to talk to you about today is a fairly significant issue of concern for us, and that is we have been told by county council and your chief administrative officer that the county expects to collect a rather significant $9,500 per unit annexation fee pursuant to some previous agreements that are quite dated. And we've been very careful and diligent in our review of the matter. We've retained highly qualified outside counsel to review the specifics all the way down the line, and we're here to make a little presentation that we think will illuminate the truth to you all that this is not a lawful exaction of a mitigation fee, and that to continue to insist upon it puts us in a really difficult situation. I obviously work at the pleasure of shareholders, and I have a duty and obligation to pursue their best interest. And while we always fully comply with the law in every area and every way we can, when we meet a circumstance like this where, for reasons I'm sure well beyond the control of this board, a fee is not due and payable. So Ms. Holly Cordova is our in-house general counsel. She's put together a little PowerPoint that's very succinct and tries to lay out the legal points, and when she's done, I'm going to come back and summarize real quickly our thoughts on the matter. So, Holly?
Good morning, members of the board. Let me just find our PowerPoint. Thank you for letting us take the time to speak with you today. As Jim mentioned, I am General Counsel for Benchmark Communities, and we are developing the Homestead project in the city of Hollister. Our reason for coming to you today is to request that the board hear our position and confirm that the annexation fee won't be assessed for our project. There are several reasons why for that. First, there's an older annexation fee from 1999, which doesn't apply because it expired before we submitted our vesting tentative map application. The subsequent fee that was put in place in 2011 doesn't apply because at that point our project was already annexed into the city of Hollister. In addition, the annexation fee is an unlawful exaction that's prohibited under state law in a few different levels, and I'll get into that in a little more detail. Just to give you a brief timeline for our project and for the activities with the city and county, in 1999, the county and the city of Hollister signed a tax sharing agreement. About a year later, the city and the prior owner of our project signed an annexation agreement. That annexation agreement was recorded against the project. We recognize that it encumbers our project, and it provided that the owner must comply with the 1999 TSA. That tax sharing agreement, however, expired by its own terms in January of 2010, and it wasn't extended. So at that point, the annexation fee went away for any lots that it hadn't accrued on. Because no building permits had been pulled at that point in time, no annexation fees were due for our project under that 1999 agreement. It just had simply expired at that point. So the 1999 TSA and that annexation fee does not apply to our project. Now, a subsequent annexation fee came into place with a 2011 tax sharing agreement. That agreement was not recorded against our project, and it was not disclosed to the owner of the property. That being said, I don't know that it was really necessary to disclose it to us because that fee wouldn't have applied to us either. The reason for that is because by 2011, when that agreement was put in place, our project had already been annexed into the city of Hollister. It was annexed in 2002.
We have a question. Go ahead, Supervisor Munzer.
Okay, so you're saying you were annexed into the city under the previous agreement, and the previous applicant agreed to those terms, but they went away. So then when you came along, you then pull your permits, and the new one doesn't affect you either. You want it both ways.
Well, the reality is, I think that there was probably a lapse between the agreements between the city and the county.
I have always said that I will support any developer that comes into this community and supports the community. We have been raped and pillaged by so many out-of-town developers over the years to the tune of having our city sewer system overbuilt and a moratorium put in place. And that's what I'm hearing from you again. I'm hearing that you just want to come in, you want to rape us and pillage, take your profits, go home, and you don't want to do anything to support the community so that we don't end up in a deficit position like we were when we were being built out in the, what was it, 80s or 90s?
And Mr. Board Member, with all due respect, we certainly understand that there are fees that are going to be assessed against our project. The issue is that those are fees that need to be assessed in a legal way, and they're fees that should be disclosed at the time that the project is being processed. There really was no annexation fee that applied at the point that we submitted our vesting tentative map. There are methods for municipalities to arrange to put those fees in place, but the annexation fee from 1999 had already expired at the time that we submitted our application. So certainly there was a lapse in the agreements between the agencies, but that is something that was never continued. It was not disclosed to us, and as I'll describe a little further, that fee was never placed upon us in our conditions of approval for our tentative map. So while we understand, and we certainly pay fees and annexation fees for other projects, those are only fees that can be assessed if they're done in a legal fashion. Did you have any further questions, or would you like me to proceed?
No.
As I mentioned, that in 2011, at that point, the property was already annexed into the city, so the fee that was put in place in 2011 would not apply. In 2013, that's when we submitted our application for our vesting tentative map. It's that point under the Subdivision Map Act, when we make our full submittal, that any regulations, requirements, and conditions would take effect. Our vesting tentative map was approved in 2013, and the conditions of approval subjected the project to the 2000 annexation agreement. Now, like I mentioned, that annexation agreement is in effect. It encumbers our property. There are some existing conditions and requirements under that agreement that we recognize we need to comply with. However, specifically, the annexation fee and the TSA had already expired. So while we're subject to the annexation agreement, the TSA portion of that agreement no longer applies. In addition, the conditions of approval did not subject the property to the 2011 TSA or that annexation fee. So that 2011 annexation fee doesn't apply because the property was annexed. The fee was not a condition of our approval, and in fact, it was never disclosed to us until September of 2014. At that point, the city provided a copy of that TSA to us and told us that this $9,500 per lot annexation fee would apply. As Jim mentioned, that caused great concern to us because it certainly wasn't included in our analysis of the project, in our underwriting for the project. We met at that point with Mr. Espinoza to discuss our concerns. As Mr. Fletcher mentioned, we researched this rather heavily. We retained expertise through outside counsel, and we wrote 2 written objections to the county. To date, we haven't received a substantive response on those, although we understand from county counsel that the county and the city are working together on a revised TSA agreement. Now, we know that that's not going to be complete before we start pulling our certificates of occupancy. But the reality is, while we are thrilled that the city and the county are working together on a new agreement, because we think that the existing fee structure poses significant legal challenges for both agencies. That being said, any new agreement shouldn't apply to Benchmark because we already have a vesting approved tentative map. As I mentioned, the annexation fee does also violate state law in a few different ways. First, the California Mitigation Fee Act prohibits any unjustified fees and conditions. So an agency can't assess a fee that's based on an expired or an inapplicable agreement. And in addition, it's unjustifiable to assess a fee that's not included in the conditions of approval for the project. In addition, under the Subdivision Map Act, the project can only be subject to requirements that are in effect as of the date that our application was complete. And as I've already mentioned, at that point, we really, the 1999 annexation fee was over, and we'd already been annexed into the city, so no new annexation fee could be assessed. It's also well established that the Subdivision Map Act requires a nexus between the fee and the project. So the fee is supposed to be tied to the services and facilities that are being provided and supported by the county. However, the way the fee is assessed needs to be looked at as well. And in this situation, we understand that the fee's been waived entirely for the city of San Juan Bautista, and it's been reduced or waived for other developers in the city of Hollister. Now, the services that are going to be provided to our project aren't significantly different than any other residential projects that would be coming into the community. So that disparate assessment just indicates that there's really no cognizable nexus between the annexation fee and those services that are being provided. Based on that, the annexation fee is actually an unlawful exaction, and the county and the city, not only are you legally prohibited from collecting it, but you would face some significant legal liability if you attempted to collect and enforce it. And for that reason, we do request that the county confirm that no annexation fee will be assessed for our project. Now, I would like also to mention that this is very time sensitive for us because, as Jim mentioned, we've already built these houses. We're going to be seeking final inspections in June. So at this point, we can't afford to wait any longer on this issue. We're really hoping for a resolution very quickly. If we don't get that from the board, unfortunately, our next step is to seek legal remedies through court. That is something we don't take lightly. It is something we don't want to do. We don't think it's in the best interests of the county, the city, and certainly not something that we want to go down the road on. We think that it's much more appropriate for this to be addressed at the board level. And I'd like to bring Jim back up for any final comments.
Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. She's available if you have any questions. Supervisor Munzer, I definitely appreciate your comments, and I understand your frustration. I think rape and pillage is a little strong. We're not attempting to do that in your fine community. But fair is fair, and we think we're operating or have been operating under a clear understanding of what the law says. We've been working with your staff since September when I first became aware of this different opinion. And as Holly says, we are always looking to find the win-win situation if there's one out there. So that's why we're here. We'd like to see if there's a way to get this resolved in a quick and painless fashion for all of us as best we can. And so.
Well, thank you for your comments. What I'm going to do now is open it up to the public to see if there are any public comments or questions at this time. Mr. Jones, you may come up.
Thank you, Madam. If you get out your little copy of the Constitution, go to Article 1, Section 10. First entry is the limitations of powers of the several states. Federal Constitution just limits federal activity, except for this one paragraph. It limits the powers of the states, and since the county is a subdivision of the state, it applies to San Benito County Board of Supervisors as well. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, confederation, blah, 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 nor pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or laws, da, 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 da. Looks like you had a gap in there in the timeline of when one fee expired and the next fee was initiated. And in the interim, you had this organization that came in and did their thing. Now you have an ex post facto law that you're trying to apply. And that's against Article 1, Section 10, Constitution of the United States. I think you might have gotten caught on this one because the board was a little lax and let this expire. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yes, I have other speakers.
Okay, thank you.
Doug Lamore.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Doug Ledabor. I'm with Highland Partners Group. We have interest in a property at 1811 Buena Vista Avenue in San Benito County. I saw this item on the agenda, and I was kind of wrestling between whether I should make this more of a public comment or under this agenda item, and I chose under the agenda item. I really can't speak to their approval dates vis-a-vis the tax sharing agreement dates and such. But I would like to comment on the master agreement for tax transfer upon annexation agreement, because this affects our property as well. When you read through it, most of it makes sense. The recitals, any new development needs to provide or generate sufficient revenue over the long term to maintain adequate levels of public service. The allocation of payments, the drainage fee, the capital improvement fee, and so on, all seem to make sense to me. But what I really wrestle with is the additional amount of $9,500 per lot that is charged upon annexation. I think it's excessive, and I'm not sure that there's a nexus established that would warrant the fee. You know, if it were being applied equitably across the board, but I look at San Juan Bautista, I understand they are not being charged a fee there. And even if they were, from a practical standpoint, this fee, all you're doing is increasing the cost of housing to your local residents. If you go into Benchmark's community homestead, I went in and talked to the sales agent, and a good share of the buyers there are local move-up residents. And I think we're fooling ourselves if we think that the builder is just going to absorb these fees. It's passed on to the consumer. So by continuing to collect this fee, all you're doing is increasing the cost of housing to your own residents. So I would recommend that, you know, their legal matters are their legal matters, but I would certainly like you to direct staff to take a look at the fee, maybe study it, and see if it's warranted moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a question?
Sir, what's the address again on Buena Vista that you just mentioned?
1811, it's an 11.5 acre parcel, currently owned by Fernando Gonzalez.
Okay.
And we're in escrow to purchase that.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Mark Tiernan.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Board of Supervisors, Mr. Espinoza, Mr. Granger. My name is Mark Tiernan. I'm here today to represent Award Homes, and we have a statement that we'd like to give to the board. We have two current projects in the city of Hollister that have been annexed from the county. We have another project that we're in the early stages with and are looking at developing directly with the county. We have had great interaction with the staff of the City of Hollister and the County of San Benito. The customer service level has been excellent. The information shared has been very timely, and we really appreciate that. And just to let you know, we have development projects up and down the Central Coast, and you guys are by far not the norm, and we really appreciate that here. However, our issue today is that we were led to believe that the annexation fee issue was going to be dealt with over a year ago. We had several conversations with county staff, the executive director of LAFCO, and we're going to be in a position to be pulling building permits within the next 4 to 6 months. So this matter is very, very timely, and there's a sense of urgency to it. And however, we are no closer to a resolution than we were last year. We are businessmen. We wish to conduct ourselves accordingly. The last thing we wish to do is to spend time and money litigating this issue. It is truly a last resort for us, but we need to be perfectly clear. If there is not some resolution, hopefully within the next 30 days, we will have no other choice than to seek declaratory relief through the court system. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Any other speaker cards? No. Okay. Marty, you're welcome to come up.
Marty Richmond from Hollister. You know, this is not the first time I've spoken on this issue. I want to remind you all that I was here when we had a local developer who came up here and got caught in the squeeze between the fact that the city and the county did not do a good job of keeping their regulations up to date and let the hole develop. I remember that well. And I came up here and I said, here's a red flag running up here. You guys are going to take action on this. And what's going to happen is nobody's going to fix the problem and the hole will remain and people will be walking through that hole. I just want to remind you of that. So this is not, I don't want the public to believe that, oh my God, this just happened. This did not just happen. You can see the dates involved. I have no dog in this fight. If I had my way, I would rather have the money than not have the money. I do want to comment on Councilman Munzer's.
Supervisor.
Thank you, Supervisor. Excuse me. I apologize. I'm so used to berating the city council that I lost track of where I was. I do want to comment on your choice of words. Maybe that's a holdover from Measure J, and I would like you guys to quit it. Because I don't remember when a local developer came up here and said, I want relief from this because I'm stuck between these two. I don't remember anybody saying he was raping or pillaging anybody. I remember how nice you were to him because he lived here. I think we ought to take people at face value. They come in and they do their thing, and if they haven't done the raping and the pillaging, let's not accuse them of raping and pillaging. And I would also point out to Supervisor Munzer that the people who built in Hollister and overdid the sewer, they paid their bills. It's just that city took the money and did something else with it, okay? They didn't fix, they were warned they were supposed to fix the sewer plant, and they didn't. So that's the city's fault. And this fault is somewhere between the county and the city. I have no idea who's at fault. I don't want to point fingers because I don't know, but I do know this problem has existed for a long time, and that hole that we allowed to happen, whoever did it, was going to keep moving until it got filled. I've encouraged you guys to keep your impact fees up to date. For instance, we talked about library impact fees. We talked about it until our heads fell off. Where is it? Do we have it? We don't have anything. You don't keep your impact fees up to date. The city doesn't keep their impact fees up to date. We start putting in these flaky charges that we don't have anything to hook to because we know we need the money, but we don't want to do it the right way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Marty. Anyone else from the public that would like to address the board on this item? Okay, I will bring it back. My recommendation at this time, we received a lot of information. Do you have that PowerPoint in print that we could get and our council can get as well?
I don't have it, but I'll be happy to send hard copies.
Would you please, because that's a lot of information that we need to, to really think about. My recommendation would be that we've heard the testimony, that we set up a closed session item on April the 21st, and give board and staff an opportunity to do some research, to give us more information, to investigate this issue, and we can discuss it and possibly make a decision on that day. Is that, if the board is in agreement to move that direction?
You don't know how painful it is.
Do I have the consensus of the Board of Supervisors? I know I'm on board. I need to give staff more time. This is a lot to...
Yes, Madam Chair, I'll support
A
you.
lot to think
Yes.
about and a lot to try to make a decision on. So,
Yes.
you're okay? Supervisor Rivas, are you?
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. But I really appreciate those who spoke, and this is something, I'm wrong about a lot of things. But a year ago or a year and a half ago, when this board was faced with reducing fees, I was the only supervisor that voted against it because I knew this would happen. I knew this was going to happen. So I don't want to give any false hope from my perspective to the local developers, but I won't be supporting a reduction of fees. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, very good. Supervisor Patella?
Yeah, I support the chair's suggestion that we come back and make analyze the presentation. Certainly, I have some real concerns about waiving any fees that we have in place. The other day, I went out to the Ag Department myself, and these are services that we provide our community. And those annexation fees are set in place for general government what we needed. And being on this board for a long time, we've worked very, very hard to come up with that figure. And prior to that, the fees be previous. And the staff has a nexus to it. There was no gaps. And a win-win situation, you want to know what the win-win situation? Don't come up here and threaten the county and just pay the fee and move on with your project. You're making plenty of money. And, that's the win-win situation. But we need this because we're short on revenues. You just saw the presentation before, and I don't know. I'm going to end it right there. I'm pretty frustrated as Supervisor Munzer.
But you will support coming back on the 21st
Yes,
of
absolutely,
April.
because I have more to say.
Okay, Supervisor
I guess
Munzer.
my last comment is, what was it, a year or so ago, we lower our impact fees to try to encourage
No, it was
both the
longer than
city.
that. It was
both-
in 2009.
Okay. No, I was on the board.
Oh, were you? Okay.
Okay. So it was both the city of Hollister and the county of San Benito, we jointly lowered our impact fees, especially our traffic impact fees, to encourage the building community. And I feel today we got our thank you for that. 3 people got up talking that they'll see us across the street. I do not appreciate that very much, but I will support your recommendation that staff comes back with this.
Okay.
on the-
Staff has direction? Thank you so much. Then we'll go ahead and get this back on a closed session item. All right, we'll move on to item number 20, and that is that the chair will provide the LAFCO assignment, and I'll make it short and sweet, that I will put myself on the LAFCO board for time specific. I believe it goes to 2019. I have asked Supervisor Rivas to replace me in the governance earlier, and he agreed. So that will be the change that I will make. So any comments from the public regarding this item? Yeah, and yes, and the Supervisor Rivas just reminded me, he will remain the alternate on LAFCO.
Okay.
And I will go ahead and make a motion that I make that appointment.
Yep.
Okay, so there's my motion.
Second.
A second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item number 21 will receive a presentation from the Central Coast Coalition Legislative Day. Thank you, Mary. You're back with us.
I am, yes. Let me just pull up. I have a quick PowerPoint presentation. Supervisor
I like the word
Botello.
quick. Thank you.
Oh,
I
pardon?
like the word quick.
Yes, yes,
Thank
absolutely. Supervisor Botello joined me in Sacramento on March 11th with the Central Coast Coalition for our annual lobby really it's a legislative day that we do annually in Sacramento. So just quickly, I'll go over who the Central Coast Coalition is, talk about what the goals were of our efforts, and then go over some of the highlights from some of the meetings that we had. The Central Coast Coalition, we formed in 2010. It is all the councils of governments and metropolitan planning organizations in the Central Coast, south to Santa Barbara. We have San Luis Obispo, Monterey County, and Santa Cruz County, along with San Benito, and then the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments is also a member. And our purpose is really to provide advocacy and information to all of our jurisdictions and work with our state officials. So again, we were in Sacramento on March 11th. We had a full day. Our goals were to raise awareness of our efforts at the coalition and also talk about our partnership, and we feel that that's a really good something really good that we have to offer, that we're all working together, so many counties with similar goals. We wanted to advocate for new state funding opportunities. As we know, we're very limited for funding for transportation, and talk about what the potential solutions might be, whether they be statewide bonds, local sales taxes. There's discussion in Sacramento about road usage charges, and all of that. So this was our legislative platform. It was included in your packet, so we had this with us as we met with all transportation officials and elected members. So our goals were really to, we want to increase state funding for transportation, increase regional control and flexibility. That was a big message that we brought forth, that, that Sacramento really needs to recognize that we need to control our own transportation dollars, identify projects, and meet our own needs. And then also ensuring a fair distribution of cap and trade funding. The cap and trade funding that's coming through is very limited for transportation, and we wanted to ensure that the Central Coast would receive a fair share. So this is just some of the folks that we met with. We met with Assembly Budget Director Chris Woods, and he went over the Speaker Atkins funding proposal, which is to increase vehicle license fees. And then some of that money would come back to transportation projects. So we talked about what that might look like. We also met with the California State Transportation Agency Secretary Brian Kelly, and he, reiterated that his goal is to generate new revenue for transportation. CTC Executive Director Will Kempton really focused on the need for partnerships with transportation agencies and the California Transportation Commission. And then we met with a commissioner from the California Transportation Commission, Jim Arp, and he talked a lot about public opinion and education. So he's with the California Alliance for Jobs, and they've done a lot of work, focus groups, and talking to different folks to see what the mood is and what people want to see for transportation funding. And then we ended the day with meetings with various legislators. So we met with our Assembly member, Luis Alejo, Senator Anthony Canella. We also sat in on a meeting with the staff to Senator Bill Monning, and we met with Assembly member Mark Stone and really just delivered our message and talked about our needs. In terms of what's going to keep going is the Central Coast Coalition will continue our advocacy. We'll be sending letters to everyone that we met with, thanking them for the opportunity and reiterating our platform. We'll continue information sharing and meetings with transportation officials and our legislators. And of course, we're looking for community input and building some support for the objectives that we have. So that's my hopefully quick enough presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
That was very good, and I want to thank Supervisor Botello for having you come and do this presentation. I think all of us are very well aware of the challenges that we have with the lack of funds for our roads, and so this just, gives a little more puts a little more light on how serious that is.
It really is, and and we've been talking as a board, and I believe the city council and our interaction with Hollister as far as what we're going to do with our own road projects. And we just have to continue to put this in the forefront and educate the public where we're at with this. And it is a state problem and a state issue, and the coalition is a demonstration that it's not a San Bernardino County problem. You know, we drive on our roads and we think, you know, San Bernardino County, it really is not addressing the problem. But, and first and foremost is if we're going to ask the public to support a sales tax, we really have to get off the stick and figure what type of tax that's going to be, how much it's going to assess on top of the existing sales tax, and whether or not it's be a general tax or a dedicated tax. I think that information is going to come out in the survey. And if people are going to support this with the understanding of the condition of our roads and perhaps some needed improvements to Highway 25, great. If not, it will be their choice ultimately. And in the meantime, you know, why is this happening? The state, they're looking at a number of different avenues to go down to capture some additional transportation dollars. There's and none of the representatives that we talked to were quite in unison with a particular focus and an idea at the time we took the trip, and I hope they're narrowing that down. But they're talking about maybe increasing the vehicle license registration fee and or road charges, which they developed a study group, but that's not come out for 2 or 3 years. That's not going to help us. But one of the things that was encouraging as we talked to the representatives from the Assembly and Senate and Transportation is that they recognize that they got to get more state money down to a local level and allow us with a little bit more flexibility and control with some of that money. And maybe an emphasis will be based on self-help counties getting a little bit of more of a kick with additional revenue, and that's why it's so important that that's an option for maybe this with the sales tax.
Yeah, and I can tell you, I'm glad you're talking about the sales tax, because the CAO and Supervisor De La Cruz and I, in the intergovernmental, are wanted to bring back, and we will be bringing back to this board, there is an agreement at that level that we do want to do a general sales tax, then, and we talked about maybe 1%, which would make us even with the city of Hollister, but the education part is critical so that people understand that if we do this is for the quality of life of San Bernardino County and make sure that we, even though we cannot be specific on this general sales tax, we can have an advisory committee as part of the initiative to make sure that they know that it will be governed, that it will be specific at that advisory level. So there is agreement and unity in that respect.
Yeah, and I think ultimately we have to encourage a steering committee similar to that Measure A? Measure A had to promote this. Otherwise, it's a goal like our hotel tax.
Exactly.
And, you know, and we're dead in the water, but we don't have a whole lot of time.
I know we don't, and that's why it's important that we bring back the survey information and that we'll continue to discuss it at that level, and we're moving forward with a plan. So that'll come back to the board. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate your information, and thank you, Supervisor Botello. Any other questions? Any comments or questions from the public? Okay, we'll move on to item number 22. First 5 San Benito, CAO Espinosa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this item is coming out of out of the first 5 of San Benito, and we have Executive Director Lisa Faulkner here to give a presentation with first 5 becoming independent from the county. We've had many discussions internally with staff, council, with Lisa Faulkner, as well as the commission itself, the governance of that, and we've met just, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and I think we're all kind of somewhat in agreement to move forward with that, but Lisa's going to elaborate a lot more on this. So, Lisa?
Thank you, Ray. Good morning, Madam Chair and Board of Supervisors. Thank you for the opportunity to present. I've been here a couple times as the First Five San Benito Commission has been working on a due diligence process, looking into the amending the ordinance that would allow us to become a separate entity from San Benito County. So just a little bit of a history on First Five. As you know, we're funded by Proposition 10 tobacco tax, and that was passed in 1998. In 1999, the San Benito County Board of Supervisors established the First Five San Benito County Children and Families Commission, and now we're known as First Five San Benito. At that point, we had two options. We could have either become an independent entity, or we could have gone under the county. And I think as a new organization, I think the group, I wasn't part of that decision, but I believe maybe Margie was, but we decided to opt and go under the county. And right now, we've conducted some studies that I'm going to show you the findings about, and what we're looking at is revisiting that decision and asking you to support our independence from the county. So as a county agency, I just want to review with you that we deposit our funds into the county treasury. We comply with the state by submitting an annual audit and evaluation report. We oversee the funds. The commission makes decisions and reviews the contracts for our funds. We do receive human resources, fiscal and administrative and legal functions from the county. And we do appreciate the services of the county, but the findings of our study was that they were expensive. I think that the biggest reason that we're looking to go independent is that we have a limited ability to provide staffing and obtain new revenue via grants. And so when I look at some of the counties that have made this decision to separate, I believe that this is common. There's about 50% of the First Five commissions.
So we have a question from one of the supervisors.
Hey, Lisa, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but
It's
I'm not
okay.
sure if your PowerPoint will address this, but you said in that second to last point that county services are valuable and expensive. Do you have examples on why they're expensive or some figures?
So they're about, the findings showed that they're about 6% of our annual budget.
Okay, as far as what the county charges you to
Right.
monitor and to provide those expenditure or those the fiscal services?
So this study was done in 2010 and 2011, and at that time, I believe our cost plan was a little more expensive than what it is now. At that time, I think when this study was done, that you were investing in a new accounting system. There was a lot of employees that were retiring, and there was a pre-fund of those benefits. And I know that they did a cost analysis of all services, and I really think that when we were looking at legal and health benefits, it was about a wash. And so I think that the county has made some changes to the way they're investing in CalPERS, and so as an independent agency, we can make those choices too. So I think that the study, personally, after reviewing it, I've spent a lot of time with Barbara Thompson on this issue, and I really think that it's not so much that we're going to have a cost savings as it is that we want to be flexible and be able to go out and gain private and foundational revenue, and maybe some government grants through like Department of Ed. And a lot of times we need to be not a governmental entity. Imagine if I was proposing to get a grant from an entity and they asked me for financials, just preclusive. It's really hard to report under the county tax ID number. So when that separates, it will affect our bottom line, but not I don't think as much as this report suggests. And I'm going to get to that report. Hopefully I've answered your question. What I'm trying to show here on this, if we became a state agency, things wouldn't change as far as we would still, we would like to talk to the county treasurer and leave the money, the First Five trust fund within the county. We'd still submit the same independent audit reports and report to the state. That's a programmatic report that we can contract with an independent evaluator. The commission would still serve as a fiduciary and look over those funds. The part that would be different if we went outside of the county is that we'd have to replace administrative and fiscal services, and we'd have to contract out for legal services. So I work closely with the neighboring First Fives, and they have legal counsel. So the goal here would be to work with contractors that are currently or have provided these services to other standalone First Five entities. So the biggest thing here is that we'd like to pursue grant revenue to compensate for the decline in tobacco revenue. So if we didn't do anything, in this slide, we start this at 2012 and it projects out to 2019. If we didn't do anything and we kept our costs the same, we would run out of enough money to run our operations around 2020. And so we are doing things to prevent that from happening. This is the study that I jumped ahead to. It's a feasibility study that was conducted, funded by the Packard. We've had two studies done on this issue, funded by the Packard, and it was conducted by Renaissance Resources West. And so they looked at our staffing and also did a cost-benefit analysis looking at going independent versus staying with the county. And so they did identify cost savings, and following that study, the commission supported the idea and wanted to do a little more investigation. And so following that study, I became the executive director, and we made management changes in 2011. And I want to say that we've always been within our budget. I went to a fiscal workshop not too long ago, and I see a lot of First Fives that are moving in and using funds on reserve and in their fund balance, and we haven't done that. And I think we've restructured the way we're operating. We have lower administrative overhead, and we've also restructured the way we're investing in the community. We're making a larger impact as far as our numbers, but we're doing it in a different way for a cost savings to the commission. So I was here in October of 2013. It doesn't seem very long ago, but I asked for a resolution supporting my effort to go to the Packard Foundation to continue the study and looking at the idea of being independent. So we hired a strategic planning consultant that facilitated this process, and we really vetted out what services we needed to contract out for to replace county services. So another thing that happened is that they established a compensation package for the staff, and then we updated our strategic plan to reflect the restructuring that we did as a commission. So this is just shows that really want to illustrate that we're always have been and always will have to report and comply with state regulations. So First Five within the state, there's a state association, and there's learning circles within the state. So it's always had an active role with our commission. And then the commission itself, our local First Five commission, will remain the same. And we will continue to ask for your support in nominating and approving our selection for commissioners. That won't change. What won't change is that we'll come back to you and share our strategic plan when it's amended. So those things will all stay in place. So we are in the process of replacing services, looking at contractors that are doing this for other First Five, such as Santa Cruz and Monterey. And so we looked at possibly going under another nonprofit. The state doesn't like that. It's public funds, so they don't want us to go under the umbrella of a nonprofit. We went around and kind of talked to larger first fives to see if we could come under their umbrella and become employees of their commission. And there was no way around that. If we want to separate, that we need to have the liability within our own commission if we wanted to retain the decision-making around that fund. And so these are the things that we're looking to outsource, and we've been in contact with different contractors. So I appreciate the staff meeting with us, and Barbara Thompson's worked diligently with me to put together a separation agreement and draft, which you have a copy of, and we plan to bring that draft back April 21st and work with county staff between now and then. We are putting this ordinance on the agenda today because there's a lot of services that we'll have to go out and contract for, like if we become a participant in the CalPERS, which is our intention, we need to have this ordinance to be able to replace workman comp, CalPERS, the pension, the retirement benefits, and so forth. We currently contract individually for our general liability, our board liability, and our slip, and so that won't change, but there's some things that we need to put in place. We have a lot of work to do. We want to be an independent agency by July 1. So the first 5 commission passed a board resolution, and I think you have that, or I'm sorry, passed a resolution. And so the draft that you have talks about the different services and what that transition will look like between the county and our staff. And then once that final ordinance is in place, I by law need to submit that roster of public agency filing, and then we have 70 days to do that after the ordinance is passed. So I just want to see if you have any questions.
Okay, any questions, CAO Espinosa?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'd like to add to that and to make the board aware, be mindful that this is really not a new concept. There are 33 other counties in the state that have actually gone independent, and there are 25 that actually fall under the county umbrella. Out of the 33 that are independent, there's the better part of 20 actually manage or work with the county with different services. So in this case, that would not be the case entirely. We had discussed at our last meeting that the Treasury would still be handling some of the financial side of things, similar to that of schools that they
exactly.
that they
where
take
the
care
money
of.
is funneled through the
funneling through. So I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of that as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other question?
The only other question, I don't have any problem with this, but how will the commission be made up? It would be just by appointment from the existing commission that's there, or how does that work?
That part of the ordinance isn't going to change, and so we'll continue to do what we've done. So the commission that's in place now will continue to be in place. We post a notice of vacancy in the administrative office, and then when we have people respond to that, we put it in front of the supervisors for their approval. Mm-hmm. So that process won't change.
Okay. And having sat on the first 5 San Benito Commission not since its inception, but since we started planning this, we have gotten full support from the commission. We have had numerous studies, discussions, research, have changed the way we were moving because we found that it was beneficial to do it certain ways, or we couldn't do it the way we had initially thought of doing it. So we haven't taken it lightly. We've been able to change with a good reason to change. We have full support from First 5 California. Lisa has connected with First 5 California like never before, and full support from them, and they will also help us through the process if you need that assistance. There are no changes to the regulations, so the reporting and all the makeup of the commission will be exactly what it is now. So really all it does is allow us, First 5 San Benito is a very unique department of this county. It deals with very unique services for children 0 to 5 and their families. And so it allows us this flexibility to be able to secure grants and also to be able to use those grants immediately and get the people in place that are unique positions that are unlike any positions in the county. So that's, like I said, there's full support for that. So.
And we won't have any problems or issues capturing back the expenses that is incurred by the county if they're going to continue using the treasury. We have something that's set up that we'll be able to get that. As long as we're able, guarantee that part of it as well, right. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, and Lisa will be in communication with the treasurer to make sure that we do that, similar to, like, I think it was who said that, our CAO, similar to the schools where the money does come through. And so there will have to be an agreement, official agreement, formal agreement.
Yeah, I think that's the nature of this transition, is that First Five Commission knows that they're fully liable for those, for example, the cost plan. We know that we're 2 years behind in the cost plan. That's just the way that's billed out. So we're talking about, allocating funds or putting a reserve when we separate so that those liabilities will be covered through the Children and Families Trust Fund and not the county funds.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. Lisa, I got a quick question. Is there a formula that First Five from the state, God, I can put it, relays to local First Fives in terms of how they can use the funds and, well, not how they can use it, how much money can be set aside for fund balances?
That's a great question, because that's really come into play. As you know, the governor wanted to reclaim fund balances that some of the larger First Fives, like LA, had over $200 million in a trust fund balance, and so that caught the attention of the state. And so there's a climate within First Five, although there isn't any law, but we just did a survey and we saw that there's a pattern that you'll see up to 12 months.
Okay,
I think that of your annual budget.
Let me ask you a different question. Just give me straight answers.
Okay.
What's your annual budget?
So I would say it's going up. It's around 700,000 now.
Okay. What's your fund balance right now?
1 million.
Okay. And the reason why I ask those questions is because my understanding is that money that comes down from the state of California should go for the benefit of 0 to 5 kids, not to create fund balances.
Right.
That's the reason why I asked that question. Yeah. And thank you for your information. I do have another question. Another question is what's the relationship that we have, we the county, with you guys in terms of oversight, budget oversights, record keeping, expense reports, and things like that?
Currently, the county is providing audit services, and then we also, at the end of the year, we go out, we contract independently with an auditor to review our audit. As far as I know, for the past 5 years, there's been no findings in the audit. And then we also contract out with an outside evaluator to come in and evaluate our programs. So that won't change. As far as answering to any supervision, I am the executive director of the staff, and I answer to the commission.
Okay. Now, this formula, referring back to the fund balances, this concept of putting money in fund balances, if you guys, if the board gives a blessing to go on a separation path, would that be the intent to increase your fund balances?
No, not at all. I believe that since I've been the director, we've maintained a balanced budget, so we haven't dipped into that fund balance. That fund balance has been $1 million, and I just came back from the summit, and we had this discussion, and the counties that do hold large amounts, like our neighbor had 35 million in their fund balance, we're not one of those counties that do that. So we're within. There's some people that say that 2.5 years of operating costs, is at the far end, and then there's other that say 6 months. So I believe that our fund balance is right at the right place, especially going into this change. I think we'll have some upstart costs, and we'll want to talk about pre-funding, and that fund balance might dip down a little bit. And I also anticipate grant revenues. I imagine that we're going to be a $1 million organization within the next 3 years. So I think our fund balance reflects I think it's within standard, even though it's not set by any outside formula.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. And I've always been consistent on my position, and I just can't support it at this time, Madam Chair.
Okay, fair enough. Let me open it up to the public to see if there are any comments. I may have already done that, but if I didn't, please, anybody that would like to address the board on this item? You have any speaker cards? Oh, Al, please come up.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Board of Supervisors, and the public staff. I'm Al DeVas, the Gang Prevention Coordinator. I'm also one of the first 5 commissioners. And I just want to say that in the year that I've been associated with First 5, that I have found it to be a very strategic organization. And so what happens in the First 5 is we have very concrete strategic initiatives, and all of the actions that we perform in the community really are how can we serve our community best that are going to reinforce or support our strategic initiative. So this separation really is going to allow us to provide more services to the community, but stay within that strategic framework. I don't think the scope of operations or the vision or the idea of serving the community is shifting. I think one thing that has changed is we realized just through working together that families don't exist in vacuums. So in the world of gang prevention and probation and reducing crime, it seems so far separated from, hey, little 5-year-olds or 4-year-olds or kids in the playground. But the reality is that what happens at those ages, or the supports that we give to kids at those ages, have a direct impact way down the line when people become teenagers or adults. And just the connections that we've been able to make to support that is something that's really admirable of First 5. Their strategic vision isn't just to support 0 to 5, but also a lot of inputs to really create a better system throughout the whole community at all ages. And so this process is something that kind of helps support First 5 and its vision of supporting the whole community. So I urge you to consider that in your consideration of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Appreciate it. Any other comments from the public? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for a decision. And keep in mind before this decision is made that the separation agreement has to be in place before the ordinance becomes effective. So you have in front of you, I believe, a draft of transition to independent status, Article 2, and so we're still working on that, but this is just, to get it going so that we can get that separation agreement in place. Anything else, Lisa, that you would like to say?
No, I just appreciate the support. I don't see our relationship changing, and I look forward to meeting with you annually to give an update and share the audit findings with you and present our program outcomes. So this will just allow us just to be a little more conducive for the types of programs that First 5 runs within the community. So I appreciate your support.
All right.
Okay. I'll make a motion to support the recommendation that is before us.
Okay, I will second that motion per staff recommendation, is what you said, Anthony?
Yes.
Okay.
And let me read the title of the ordinance for the record, too. It's an ordinance adding Section 11.11.015, legal status of the Commission of Title 11 of the San Benito County Code, changing the legal status of First 5 San Benito to that of an independent entity. And then the motion can be per staff recommendation.
All right, thank you, Barbara. So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
It passes 4-0 with the supervisor, 4-1. It's lunchtime, you guys.
We're not counting your vote, Supervisor.
Not counting your vote.
Cruz.
4-1, thank you. What we'll do at this time is we're going to go ahead and break for lunch, return at 1:30, and resume our regular agenda with item number
1:30, Madam Chair?
1:30? Yes. Is that okay with the rest of the commission? With item number 23? Okay.
I guess we can make
Become
it work.
bored. See, I'm hungry.
Reduced to councilman, commission.
Thank you. Oh, gosh.